Born as the third prince, this young man possesses a destiny his brothers could never fathom. While they bask in mediocrity, he awakens a unique ability that defies the laws of their world. The Ball lineage is revered as the undisputed masters of the sword. Yet, in this era, steel is nothing compared to the absolute supremacy of magic. So, he shatters the norm. By fusing the sharpest blade with the deepest mana, he masters the forbidden mana method, circulating magical energy directly through his veins. This power didn't come cheap. It was forged in the darkness of a mysterious cave, where he was pushed to the brink of death, battling a faceless phantom to claim the ultimate technique. The result is absolute dominance. With a single, casual swing, he can now pulverize an enemy's blade into dust. When he infuses his steel with mana, no armor, no shield, and no barrier can stop him. He cuts through the impossible. Wielding this godlike might, he finally has the means to rewrite history. He will save his homeland from the tyrannical empire that burned it to ash in his past life. But to understand his rage, we must look back. Once, he was the wretched survivor of the fallen Ball Kingdom, a broken soul wandering the ruins, desperately seeking an end to his torment. A shadow looms over his half-dead form. A mysterious figure mocks his pathetic state, reminding him that the kingdom's destruction lies squarely on his shoulders. Flashback 10 years, Yuri was trash, a degenerate gambling addict who dominated every table but lost at life. Drunk on the thrill of victory, he ignored the desperate pleas of his family's trusted mage. He refused to walk away while he was ahead. When his opponents dared to accuse him of cheating, his fragile ego snapped. Rage blinded him, and he flipped the table, turning the gambling den into chaos. There was no calming him down. In a display of arrogant stupidity, he shouted his name for all to hear. Yuri Briel, the third prince of Ball. Blood was spilled that day. After slaughtering his accusers, he rushed to a secret rendezvous with Yekaterina Ivana Granzine, the empire's crown jewel. But the princess was furious at his reckless violence. His pathetic excuses only added fuel to the fire. In the heat of the moment, the necklace he gifted her, a symbol of their bond, was cast violently to the cold ground. She severed their ties with a single command: never contact her again. Yuri was left standing in the silence, wondering how he could ever atone for his sins. But walls have ears. Lurking in the shadows, an imperial spy drank in every word of their fractured alliance. By the next sunrise, the damage was done. The delicate peace between the Empire and the Ball Kingdom shattered like glass. Tension spiraled into open hostility. The atmosphere suffocated under the weight of impending doom. Until the day the sky turned red, the invasion had begun. The kingdom's great gates were incinerated in a flash of hellfire. War didn't just knock, it kicked the door down. For years, the land soaked in blood. Amidst the endless slaughter, a catastrophe occurred. Fyodor Ball, the continent's most feared swordsman, vanished without a trace. Without their legendary protector, the scales of war tipped violently. The Empire's victory became inevitable. As his world burned, a poisonous thought took root in Yuri's mind. He became convinced that Princess Yekaterina had sold him out, leaking their secrets to the enemy. The timing was too perfect. The moment his father stepped away from the throne, the Empire's fangs sank into the nation's throat. Part of him clung to a shred of hope. He desperately wanted to believe she wasn't a monster, that the woman he loved wasn't the architect of his family's genocide. That hope died the day her letter arrived. A simple note of apology that confirmed his worst nightmares, plunging his heart into an abyss of despair. He became a demon on the battlefield, carving a path through waves of enemies. But even demons bleed. Exhausted and outnumbered, the Empire's knights finally cornered the fallen prince. Yuri dropped his sword. He closed his eyes, ready to embrace the cold comfort of death. But the Reaper would have to wait Luran, his loyal knight, threw his body in front of the killing blow, a final act of ultimate sacrifice to buy his prince one last chance. Yuri screamed, desperate to save him, but duty strangled his cry. He had to swallow his agony and run, fleeing like a coward to keep the royal bloodline alive. Days turned into a blur of fear. Yuri found a rat hole to hide in, but he knew the clock was ticking. The hunters were closing in. Hope was a distant memory. The crushing realization settled in his bones: his father, the king, had likely been assassinated long ago. Then, the inevitable happened. An imperial knight discovered his sanctuary. Stripped of his pride, Yuri didn't fight. He begged. He groveled at the enemy's feet, pleading for his life, not for himself, but for his family's legacy. But the knight didn't swing his blade. With a grim expression, he spoke of karma and the empire's inevitable rot. He showed mercy, warning the last prince to flee before the others arrived. Yuri ran until his lungs burned. He staked his entire existence on a gamble with fate. That one day, he would return to claim his vengeance. But it was a losing bet. Everyone he loved perished. Years wasted away with no revenge, no glory. Just the cold certainty that an executioner was coming for him. Which brings us back to the ruins. The mysterious dark figure stands over him, declaring that Yuri Briel doesn't even deserve the mercy of a quick death. Every death, every tragedy, every drop of blood, the figure lays it all at Yuri's feet. The figure tears away his mask, revealing a face from the deepest nightmares. It is a rotting, undead warrior. It is Luron, the very knight who died to save him. The irony is cruel. The man who once gave his life for the prince has returned from hell to take the prince's life. Cold steel pierces Yuri's heart, but the physical pain is nothing compared to the soul-crushing weight of guilt. He dies knowing he failed everyone who ever loved him. As darkness consumes him, a memory surfaces. His father's voice, stern and majestic, echoing one final command: never abandon your honor. His consciousness dissolves into the void, but death is not the end. When he opens his eyes, the ruins are gone. Yuri Briel gasps for air, his heart pounding. He isn't in hell. He is a child again, standing in the royal palace, staring up at the very father he thought was lost forever. For 3 agonizing days, the boy had remained in a deep coma, while his anxious father held a silent vigil by his bedside, watching for any sign of life. But inside Yuri's mind, chaos reigns. He cannot comprehend how on earth his father is breathing right now, or why he's even here to begin with. Sinking into a pit of despair, the boy shrinks back, grieving the death of his father immediately after remembering his own demise. Even though the leader of the Bosleys has no clue what his child is babbling about, Yuri grips his father's hand and admits that this tragic end isn't unbelievable. After all, even though his dad always boasted about honor, the man had plenty of skeletons in his own closet. Finding his son's nonsense as ridiculous as ever, the father smacks the kid's head, nearly slapping the soul right out of Yuri's body. The boy is brought to tears by the heavy blow, wailing and questioning why his father can't kick his troublesome habit of violence, even in the afterlife. It seems Yuri is fully convinced that both of them have been damned to the underworld. He believes they are in hell right now, until a single leaf blows past, shocking him back to his senses. His gaze shifts to the stunning view outside as a realization hits him. This cannot be hell. The underworld would never be decorated with such breathtaking beauty or people overflowing with vibrant life. If this were truly the abyss, there would be other sinners roaming the wasteland. Legions of demons would be taunting Yuri for the pathetic life he led, mocking him for being the one responsible for the destruction of his own kingdom. Reality slowly starts sinking in as he stares at his living father and the rest of his brothers. Suddenly, the kid's vision begins to waver again, and he collapses, causing his panicked family to scream his name in terror. The truth is, at this very moment, the third prince of the Briel Kingdom has regressed back to being 13 years old. Let's dive into his thoughts for a moment. All this time, Yuri believed he was trapped in some wild, feverish dream, or perhaps it was some intense deja vu hitting him at the moment of his death. But despite trying his best, he simply could not wake up from this strange reality. What's more, the world as he knew it didn't end. Life continued as usual, and memories he had long forgotten were resurfacing in this present timeline. He shares a normal family dinner and finally accepts the ultimate reality of his situation. He has returned to the past. He is back in the spring of his 13th year, holding a second chance to correct every mistake. The next morning, a maid arrives to help the young master wake from his slumber. Yuri had specifically tasked her to wake him on time, yet he is still sleeping like a log. The kid snaps awake in shock and panic, realizing he's supposed to be attending his sword training class right now. He frantically rushes his preparations, begging Ina to get everything ready while he washes. He is in such a chaotic state that even Ina thinks he needs to calm down. She suggests they take it slow, insisting she helps him wash his face first to cool off. However, seeing her alive and well brings traumatizing memories flooding into his mind, because in the original timeline, he found Ina slaughtered among the others. The chilling memory of her gruesome death still leaves him frustrated and heartbroken. Turning back to address her directly, Yuri makes an astonishing request. He demands that his maid slap the living daylights out of him. Ina is completely lost for words, as her only role is to serve him and ensure his well-being. To slap him would be a betrayal of her duty and a grave crime for a servant. But Yuri argues that since he is ordering it directly, it must be done. The maid is still hesitant and concerned, asking if he is absolutely certain about this command. The confident Yuri is in the middle of completing his sentence when a thunderous smack crashes into his face. It is so loud it scares away the birds outside. Imagine the irony if she had accidentally killed him right there. The story would end before it began. The scene jumps to the training grounds, and sure enough, Yuri's face is swollen up like a balloon. He had forgotten just how monstrously strong Ina truly was. While he practices his blade work, even the bystanders are laughing at his miserable condition. Instead of offering him ointment to soothe the swelling, he has the entire gang mocking him. The funniest part is that Bernard, his sword teacher, doesn't even acknowledge that his face looks completely different today. The kid notes with interest that his teacher doesn't comment on his imperfect stance or his positioning. He simply feeds the boy a sparring experience, offering zero guidance or information. It makes Yuri want to question how this guy became a teacher in the first place. Until the third prince remembers a secret meeting he once spied on between Bernard and his father. In that memory, the sword teacher exclusively complained about Yuri's wasted potential. The kid could do so much with his talent, but he wasn't serious about training. Otherwise, he had the fundamentals to become the finest warrior in the kingdom. It turns out that Bernard is actually an elite instructor. It was genuinely just Yuri being a terrible student that forced the man into silence. In his original life, the boy ignored that meeting and got lazier. It frustrates his current self because he now understands the grave mistakes of his youth. With burning resolve, Yuri confronts his teacher. He commands the man to stop holding back, demanding proper instruction from this moment on. No more games. He is officially ready to pour 100% of his soul into every single session. The sword teacher smiles, amused by this sudden shift in attitude. Yet, deep down, he is thrilled to hear such conviction. A terrifying wave of blue aura explodes from Bernard, signaling the start of true hell. Without warning, he vanishes into a blur of speed, crashing his blade against the young master's defenses. Realizing he may have misspoken, Yuri panics. He frantically tries to stop this maniac from actually ending his life right then and there. Bernard retreats to his stance, leaving our boy standing there with a look of absolute horror plastered on his face. In his arrogance, he had completely forgotten a crucial detail. A detail that could cost him everything. This man, currently drowning in blue spirit energy, was once the legendary sword demon before he pledged his loyalty to the kingdom. That realization sends a chill down Yuri's spine. You can see the sheer terror pooling in his eyes as the gravity of the situation sinks in. After a training session that felt like torture, the kid collapses. He hits the ground, utterly defeated and drained of all stamina. He had just tasted the bitterness of true combat. The only reason he survived was his mercenary experience from the original timeline kicking in. Yet, even while fighting for his life, Yuri finds a silver lining in this brutal beatdown. Sure, the pain makes him want to end it all, but his strength is skyrocketing with every near-death encounter. But the real shock comes from Bernard himself. The instructor cannot fathom how the young prince managed to parry every single lethal strike. It was as if his growth rate became supernatural in the heat of battle. A monster was being born. Suddenly, Ina slams the door open, shattering the tension. Panting heavily, she begs the young master to follow her immediately. Both Yuri and Bernard stiffen, alarmed to hear that the king himself is summoning his son with such urgency. When our boy demands to know the reason, the truth drops. Count Johannes has arrived, bringing his son for an audience. And that son is none other than the treacherous snake who betrayed Kingdom Ball and opened the gates to the Empire's invasion. God Barkvar, a traitorous slimeball who has returned from the past to haunt him once more. Yuri turns to his maid. His voice drops to a freezing whisper as he demands the scumbag's location. The scene shifts to the royal family sharing a meal with their guests. Witnessing the poised demeanor of the third prince, Count Johannes is taken aback. He openly praises the boy's improved physique. The king agrees with the nod, wondering if perhaps Yuri has added something special to his diet lately. Count Johannes laughs, joking that they should share whatever magic food he is eating with Gott, his own son. The king returns the pleasantries, commending Gott's intelligence. However, the count sighs, arguing that his heir is still lacking in far too many areas. Speaking of the devil, Gott seems completely captivated by Yuri's brother, practically fangirling over him right at the table. As for our protagonist, he is busy drilling holes into Gott with a death stare, forcing the nervous boy to avert his eyes. Yuri's other brother senses the friction. He wonders if there is bad blood between them, noticing the suffocating tension in the air. The irony is palpable as our boy casually admits to himself that this kid is the very knife that will stab him in the back. In his mind, his brother taunts Yuri. Why leave a snake like that alone? Especially after experiencing such a devastating betrayal. He isn't wrong. Yuri's hatred for God burns hot, disgusted by how the kid acts like high nobility when he is nothing but a coward at heart. The cold, murderous expression on his face remains frozen. Growing irritated, God finally snaps. He shoots back a furious glare, matching Yuri's hostile energy. But instead of causing a scene, our boy chooses ice over fire. He remembers that he must handle this game with intelligence. There is no way in hell he will let this bastard ruin the kingdom of Baal again. He refuses to repeat the tragic mistakes of his past life. Yuri recalls a crucial memory. In his original life, he fought God around this exact time. That petty argument might have been the catalyst, the spark that eventually led God to betray the kingdom. Cut to the training grounds. Yuri tosses a wooden sword to him, acknowledging God's potential skill with a blade. The young noble tries to downplay his abilities, but our boy cuts him off. He reminds him that their kingdom does not breed weak, narrow-minded knights. God is confused. He has no idea where this is coming from. Considering he is far from becoming an actual knight, Yuri is blunt. He tells him it is his destiny to wield the sword, a fate he cannot deny or escape. While the pipsqueak is busy stammering a reply, Yuri launches himself forward. The duel begins now. He charges in, wielding the most legendary weapon in the universe, the almighty wooden stick. Wood cracks against wood. God screams, calling him a coward for the ambush. But our boy is just getting started. He showcases ruthless battle IQ. With a swift kick, he sends dirt flying into his opponent's eyes, blinding God and creating the perfect opening. The arrogant brat had been toyed with enough. Yuri was about to teach him the true weight of a knight's honor. But then, the unthinkable happens. Yuri casually tosses his blade to the dirt, a gesture that screams absolute dominance. "I don't need cold steel to break you," his posture says. "These bare hands are more than enough." With a stride full of terrifying confidence, Yuri launches forward, delivering a devastating kick that defies physics and humiliates the boy instantly. Wielding his wooden practice sword like a divine artifact, he claims total victory over God. Gazing down at the defeated boy, dark memories surface. In a past life, this same child became a traitor who sold his family's pride to the empire. He speaks plainly to God, reminding him that his father is a titan among men, a knight revered across the entire kingdom. That high position exists for a reason. And one day, that heavy mantle of responsibility will fall upon God's shoulders. Extending a hand to his fallen opponent, Yuri admits that the hunger for survival is natural, but he cannot stomach a knight with a will as fragile as glass. In this second chance at life, he refuses to tolerate weakness in his ranks or in himself. He pierces the boy with a single question: "Why did your father become a count?" But he forbids an immediate answer. He commands the boy to carry that question in his heart, to let it haunt him every time life forces him into a corner. The lesson sinks in, and the situation diffuses as God departs, the seeds of a new destiny finally planted. As for Yuri's brother, he is completely thunderstruck, openly admitting he had bet everything on Yuri's defeat. It sounds harsh, but remember, until this moment, Yuri was known only as the kingdom's lazy, good-for-nothing trash prince. The kid takes offense, but his brother doubles down. Everyone knows the third prince as a troublemaker and a gambler, so the low expectations were justified. Annoyed, Yuri declares that his dissolute days are dead and buried, warning his brother to drop the teasing act. Watching his brother's jaw hit the floor in disbelief, Yuri flashes a knowing smile. The world has no idea that the lazy prince has awakened. Days turned into a blur of agony as the hellish training sessions with Bernard consumed his life. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, our protagonist was completely drained of stamina. With his swordsmanship improving, the instructor suggests it's time to cultivate energy. And Yuri's eyes light up. Is he finally learning Bernard's secret technique? But reality is a cruel mistress. Bernard shuts him down instantly, claiming he isn't ready for such advanced arts. Instead, he insists that Yuri must master the foundation of their bloodline, the official Bull Mana method. The boy's confused, but Bernard swears by the technique, praising it as the most balanced and efficient path for a beginner. But here is the tragic irony: Yuri had already mastered the Bull method to perfection in his previous life. During his brutal years as a mercenary, he had squeezed every drop of power from that technique until he hit an unbreakable wall. Sensing his student's visible frustration, the swordmaster pauses, wondering if the third prince has a different path in mind. Yuri calculates his next move and makes a specific request. He needs a new instructor from the Royal Guard. He doesn't need a master of refined skill. He needs someone who is a raw, chaotic ocean of unrefined talent. After all, despite his vast experience, there was one legendary technique Yuri failed to grasp in his first life. The word potential hangs in the air, sending the reputable instructor into deep contemplation. Finally, a name surfaces from the depths of his mind: Jared, the man with more latent potential than anyone else. The name Jared hits Yuri like a physical blow, dragging up a flood of bloody memories. He had known the man in the hellish wars of the past, but back then, Jared was far from legendary. In fact, he was pathetic, a weeping mess who barely survived the carnage, constantly complaining to Yuri about his misfortune. Even then, Yuri suspected Jared held a monster within him, but the world is unforgiving to those who wait. Because of his sloth and negligence, Jared never honed his gift, and his potential withered on the vine. When the war drums finally beat, he was useless, leaving Yuri to offer false hope to a broken man. They had both been wasted potential when the end came, struck down by fate, or in this case, the legendary Truck-kun. Snapping back to the present, Yuri's eyes burn with determination. He will find Jared, the potential knight, and rewrite his story. The man is training at this very moment, and Yuri intends to flip the switch that will turn a coward into a conqueror. The scene shifts immediately to the Royal Guard Academy, where destiny is about to be altered. Seeing the young master appear out of thin air, a senior knight steps forward, confused by the royal visit. Yuri plays it cool, stating he's simply here to observe the diligence of the kingdom's finest defenders. His sharp gaze sweeps across the grounds, locking onto the trainees as they clash with ferocious intensity. But amidst the sea of steel, Yuri seeks only one name: Jared. The man is nowhere to be found. Obedient to the command, the senior knight points toward the rookie's hiding spot. One look at the slacker is enough. The third prince lets out a heavy sigh of sheer disappointment. Suddenly, Bernard's earlier hostility makes perfect sense. Compared to the blood and sweat of the other fighters, Jared's training is pitifully lackluster. In this world, survival demands excellence. Yet this man does the absolute bare minimum, wasting his God-given talents on mediocrity. Seeing this wasted potential, it is no mystery why destiny paints him as a failure. In the dark future, Jared becomes a rusted, broken blade. Determined to change fate, Yuri commands Sir Rosso to fetch a wooden sword. He is joining the fray. Rosso beams with excitement, eager to see the royal in action. He asks which lucky opponent the third prince will choose for this honor. The answer is inevitable. Yuri points his blade directly at the slacker, demanding a duel with Jared. Silence falls over the training grounds. The air grows heavy with anticipation. The other trainees step back, eyes glued to the center. Jared stands opposite the young master of the Briel Kingdom. Cheers erupt for the rookie, urging him to show his worth. Yet, Jared looks utterly bored, wearing the face of a man who would rather be anywhere else. Yuri addresses him with a sharp gaze. He claims to have heard rumors of Jared's hidden potential as a knight. That is the sole reason he is here, to test those limits personally. Yuri needs to see the truth of Jared's future. Nervous but cornered, the knight accepts the challenge. The bell rings. Yuri launches the offensive immediately, lunging forward to see if the rumors hold weight. Jared does not flinch. He stands like a fortress, effortlessly deflecting the prince's strike with a lazy flick of his wrist. The young master pours on the pressure, but it is useless. The opponent's movements are terrifyingly calculated, predicting every single step. The skill gap is undeniable. Even Jared's peers watch in awe at the hidden monster within their ranks. As the steel sings, the trainees realize something else. The third prince is fighting far beyond his station. But Jared senses something wrong. Yuri strikes again, forcing a block. He realizes the rhythm is artificial. Yuri's attacks are deliberate, perfectly mirroring the pace to drag the fight out. The battle turns into a stalemate. Yuri is merely reacting to the energy fed to him, conserving his true strength. Enough games. It is time to seize control. The prince's aura shifts instantly. He brings his sword down like a hammer of judgment. The impact knocks the wind out of Jared. But the show is just starting. Miraculously, the rookie deflects even that crushingly heavy blow. It is proof of his terrifying natural talent. Yuri admits that this man's reflexes are god tier, but he is not finished. With a wide swing, he forces Jared to retreat. The momentum shifts. Yuri is no longer testing him, he is pushing him back. The attacks are heavier, faster, deadlier. Suddenly, the laziness vanishes from Jared's eyes. He stops holding back, retaliating with strikes that scream of lethal intent. Yuri is forced on his defensive. He realizes this was the inevitable conclusion. Even with the memories of a past life, raw power cannot be faked. Jared is a beast. A direct victory was never on the table. However, the prince has one final card to play. Shocking his opponent, Yuri executes a deceptive upward strike. The recoil shatters Jared's stance, tearing open his defenses. A smirk plays on the prince's lips. He knows he will lose the war, but he will win this battle. He commits to the strike. Like a flash of lightning, Yuri cuts past the knight's guard. A clean, undeniable hit lands on the prodigy. The arena goes dead silent. The third prince has just outplayed the most talented rookie in the squad. The praise is deafening, but the prince does not lower his weapon. He glares at Jared, questioning if the man is still insulting him by holding back. The knight does not speak, but his mind is racing. He should be in control, yet with every exchange, he feels like the one being hunted. Jared strides forward, passion igniting his eyes. He swings wildly, nearly getting tagged again. Try harder, Yuri taunts. The word snaps something inside the knight. Annoyance flares into rage, and he coats his blade in forbidden mana. Sir Rosso screams in terror. Using mana arts against a royal in a spar is a death sentence. But Jared is blind to reason. His blade pulses with lethal aura, slashing mere inches from the third prince's throat. If Yuri had been a second slower, his head would have rolled. Jared's rage instantly freezes into icy despair. The attack severed a lock of the young master's hair and left a thin line of blood on his skin. Reality crashes down. The trainees shout, scolding Jared as a lunatic who nearly assassinated the prince. Rosso rushes over, terrified for his life, checking for wounds, but Yuri stands calm, dismissing the near-death experience as the price of a good spar. He binds the crimson streak on his forehead and issues a chilling command to the knight, pick up your weapon. The real massacre has only just begun. Exploding into motion, Yuri becomes a blur of speed, seizing the offensive with reckless abandon. Steel sings against steel. The third prince wears a twisted smile, his blade overwhelmed by a terrifying rhythm that drives his opponent backward. This isn't the fragile royal the knight thought he knew. Jared finds himself paralyzed by shock, comparing his own skills to the monster standing before him. In training, the prince was a sloth, barely lifting a finger. But here he is a man possessed, burning with the desire to prove his dominance. More than that, Yuri isn't frightened. He is thriving in the chaos, his eyes gleaming with excitement as he clashes with Jared blow for blow. It is not just raw effort. The young master is evolving in real time, his stance sharpening and his attacks growing deadlier with every passing second. The duel locks into a stalemate, but Jared's composure begins to crack. A primal rage boils within his chest. This is a fury he has never known, a burning passion that didn't exist even when he faced veterans far stronger than this boy. Meanwhile, our protagonist stands like a war god, his azure eyes piercing through Jared's defense as he effortlessly blocks the advance. Disbelief washes over the knight. How can a sheltered prince push him to the brink of ruin? But Yuri offers no respite, launching a devastating horizontal slash. Jared barely ducks the Reaper's scythe, but the debt is paid. Yuri claims his prize, slicing a lock of the knight's hair in retaliation for the scratch on his brow. Humiliated and desperate, the knight grips his hilt with earth-shattering force, bringing his blade down in a final, cataclysmic strike. Mana explodes from his weapon. The sheer pressure is too much. Yuri's sword screams in protest before shattering into 1,000 fragments. The duel concludes with the weapon's destruction, yet, instead of defeat, our boy stands amidst the shards, offering his opponent a serene, victorious smile. The crushing aura vanishes. Jared collapses from the adrenaline dump, his lungs gasping for air after exerting every ounce of his soul. Gracefully, the young prince extends a hand to the kneeling knight, admitting that this dance of blades taught him a valuable lesson. Nerves rattle the knight, but he praises the prince's terrifying growth. As their hands meet, Jared realizes a terrifying truth. The spirit burning inside this boy is unlike anything in this world. Hidden within the fragile frame of the third prince lies the soul of a legendary warrior. Lost in his reverence, Jared completely forgets to let go, still clutching Yuri's hand like a lifeline. The mood shifts instantly. Yuri snaps at him, demanding to know why the knight is so calm after leaving a bloody gash on royalty's face. Terrified, Jared flees the scene like a whipped dog. But let's be real, that battle took everything our protagonist had too. The moment he is alone, Yuri's legs give out, and he face plants onto the floor, utterly drained of stamina. Around the training grounds, the other knights erupt into cheers, chanting Yuri's name for his spectacular display of skill. Amidst the celebration, a shadow watches from the sidelines. The captain of the knights, bearing a striking resemblance to Bernard, eyes the exhausted prince with keen interest. This is Sane, the captain of the royal guard of Briel, and he has just found a new obsession. The scene shifts, cutting to a few days after the incident. Jared is trudging home after a grueling shift when a familiar, commanding voice freezes him in his tracks. The third prince leans casually against a wall, waiting. Yuri wastes no time on pleasantries, ordering the man to follow him to a location of critical importance. Jared hesitates. Instead of blindly obeying, he worries about the training session he would miss if he plays hooky. Yuri notes this internal shift with satisfaction. It proves that Jared has finally started to respect his own potential and value his training. Smiling, the third prince claims credit for this character development, but enough talk just this once. Jared must obey without question. The knight bows his head in submission. After all, defying the royal order of this terrifying young master is not an option. Our boy looks at his new subordinate with approval. The knight is rough around the edges, but he is a weapon worth forging. Unable to contain his curiosity, Jared asks where they are headed. Yuri simply tells him to shut his mouth and keep walking. Jared trembles, fearing the prince is dragging him into mischief. But our boy reassures him this isn't a solo suicide mission. They have backup. Before the knight can ask who else would be crazy enough to join them, Yuri shouts at a figure looming ahead. It is Hernando, the family's court mage, who looks visibly startled by the young master's sudden ambush. The kid gets straight to the point. They are going on a trip, and he requires the mage's magical expertise immediately. Hernando is no fool. He tries to decline and run. That is, until our boy strikes at his fatal weakness, the mage's mountainous gambling debt. The mage freezes, whipping his head around in sheer astonishment. How could the child know his darkest secret? Yuri smiles like a devil, promising to wipe the debt clean. He assures the mage this isn't a scam. Yuri is famous for his honesty, outside of the gambling tables. Of course, seeing Hernando waver, Yuri feels the thrill of victory. He has the powerful mage right in the palm of his hand. That is, until reality slap checks him. Hernando points out a fatal flaw. The only time he sees Yuri is inside the gambling den, where the boy lies like a professional. It's a blow to his reputation, sure, but Yuri doubles down on the bribe he will pay the gold, so the mage needs to shut up and fall in line. Defeated by greed, Hernando sighs and pulls out a massive, enchanted contract. He'll go, but he's making the prince sign his soul away to ensure he gets paid. Yuri's face twists in sheer devastation as the cold, hard truth hits him in this unforgiving world. His title as the third prince is utterly worthless, but a cunning smirk plays on his lips. He shifts every cent of the damages onto Jared's name, ordering the knight to handle his dirty work. At a glance, it looks like poor Jared is being thrown to the wolves. But in reality, this is Yuri's masterstroke to completely dodge the magical contract. He is binding the knight to him. Jared is no longer just a guard. He is now the key witness to their verbal agreement. With the trap set, Hernando prepares to depart. Yet, confusion clouds his eyes. He has no idea where this chaotic trio is actually heading. After all, dragging a royal knight and a high-ranking mage this far means one thing: the mission is absolutely critical. Finally, Yuri drops the bombshell. Their destination is the legendary Sword Mountain. The mage stands frozen in disbelief until the young prince flashes a wicked grin. They aren't just visiting, they are going to plunder the dungeon of his own ancestor. Jared leads them into the abyss of an abandoned tunnel. Hernando marvels at the architecture, shocked that such a secret path existed beneath the royal nose all along. Jared stops and turns, his voice serious. He demands to know what exactly lies waiting for them at the end of this darkness. The prince shrugs with terrifying casualness. He confirms it leads to Sword Mountain, leaving the knight thunderstruck. Is it truly the place from the legends? Yuri pauses, the shadows hiding his eyes. He nods solemnly. It is exactly the nightmare they fear. His mind drifts into the bloody past. He recalls the chaos of his previous life, when the founder's legacy was unearthed right after the Empire crushed the kingdom of Briel. Amidst the flames and screams of that day, as he fled like a coward, he caught a glimpse of a headline. A hidden dungeon had been discovered within the depths of Sword Mountain. Ironically, he had used this very tunnel to escape with his life, while the Empire's greedy hand snatched up the ultimate legacy. But he is no longer that frightened child just trying to survive. This time, our boy is hunting for the truth, and he refuses to retreat. His resolve hardens like steel. He must witness firsthand what power his ancestors left behind. The darkness fades as the scene shifts to a breathtaking world. A lush green forest stretches out, beautiful enough to belong in a fairy tale. Yuri steps forward and heaves open the massive, rust-covered gates at the tunnel's exit. The squad steps into the ancient woods. Hernando scans the horizon, skeptical that the treacherous Sword Mountain begins in such a paradise. Suspicion rises. He asks how Yuri obtained the key. The prince silently recalls that, just like in his tragic past, it had been gathering dust in his study all along. Back then, ignorance was his downfall. He never understood its value, and the price he paid was everything. But aloud, he snaps at the mage to stop acting like a nagging auntie. Karma hits instantly. He yelps as a sharp pain shoots through his palm. Blood trickles down his hand. Yuri warns them grimly, these aren't leaves, they are nature's blades. Stay sharp and follow his lead. As they navigate the razor-sharp foliage, Hernando leans toward Jared, lowering his voice. He jokes that the prince must have suffered a head injury to act this strange. Surprisingly, the stoic knight nods in full agreement. But before their whispers can continue, Yuri's voice cuts through the air. He commands the two slugs to pick up the pace, proving that his arrogant, bossy streak hasn't changed a bit. Suddenly, Yuri freezes. His eyes narrow at the distance, and he signals for immediate silence. He points ahead. A massive pack of direwolves lurks in the shadows, looking one wrong move away from tearing them apart. He whispers that where there is one, there are many. Jared's eyes widen. Since when did the failure prince possess such survival instincts? Yuri replies with a cool demeanor that he simply read it in a book, and Hernando nearly faints from shock. The image of the lazy Prince Yuri actually opening a book is impossible to process. Yuri ignores the sass. The wolves are unaware, so the plan is simple, sneak past like ghosts. But fate loves a tragedy. Hernando takes a step back and crushes the only dry twig in the entire forest. The snap echoes like a gunshot. He stammers a terrified apology, sweat pouring down his face. But it's too late. A direwolf launches from the canopy, aiming for his throat. Jared reacts on instinct. He roars Hernando's name and surges forward. His blade flashes with deadly force, decapitating the beast in a single brutal motion. The carcass thuds to the ground. Yuri nods in approval. Jared was smart to use mana, as direwolf hide is as tough as iron plate. But that display of power attracts a nightmare. The pack's alpha, a mountain of muscle and fur, locks its predatory gaze onto Jared. The monster unleashes a bone-chilling howl. In a heartbeat, shadows move, and the squad is encircled by the entire murderous pack. Jared barks at them to stay close. His aura flares as he channels his mana to the limit. The wolves drool. Seeing nothing but fresh meat, they lunge in a synchronized wave of death, but Jared stands like a fortress. His eyes burn with killing intent. He doesn't just fight. He becomes a whirlwind of steel, slicing through the pack without breaking his stride. Meanwhile, Hernando praises the blade work. Yuri nods, but internally. His judgment is sharp. Jared is holding the line, but he is far from a master, far from a... The tide turns. Jared begins to falter as the relentless pack closes in. Yuri has seen enough. He nudges Hernando, demanding he stop posing and finally unleash the catastrophic magic his father boasts about. That sparks the mage into action. With a smirk about working overtime, Hernando weaves a spell, conjuring a storm of at least 100 blazing fireballs. Jared glances back, confusion on his face, but there is no time for questions. His survival instinct kicks in. A sphere of pure destruction hurtles straight toward him. He dives for cover just as the magic makes impact. Boom. The explosion vaporizes the beast horde in a blinding flash, reducing the battlefield to ash. Hours of brutal combat follow. After carving a path through endless waves of monsters, the blood-soaked squad finally conquers the mountain's peak. Jared collapses, gasping for air. His patience is as exhausted as his stamina. They stand at the precipice of the world. Jared scans the barren wasteland, skepticism heavy in his voice as he questions if this desolate rock is truly their destination. But the prince is undeterred. With absolute conviction, Yuri declares this is the place and begins to scour the area for clues. He inspects every shadow, peering behind a jagged boulder. Flash, a glint of metal catches his eye. Something is buried here, and Yuri's gaze lights up with the thrill of discovery. Without hesitation, Yuri digs into the earth with his bare hands. Jared rushes to intervene, insisting that a royal should never stoop to manual labor. Jared signals for help, but Hernando recoils in horror. The pampered mage claims that touching dirt is beneath his noble station, a total disgrace to his magic lineage. Ignoring the drama, They wrench the object free. Yuri hoists the weapon, mesmerized by the pristine, high-tier blade shimmering in the sunlight. Hernando adopts a scholarly pose. He observes that the metal shows no sign of age. It looks suspiciously new, as if planted yesterday. Yuri's eyes narrow as he finds an inscription at the hilt, the word guilty. Jared steps forward, asking if this is the founder's legacy, but Yuri hesitates, the puzzle pieces refusing to fit. Suddenly, the mountain groans beneath them. As panic sets in, a smirk plays on Yuri's lips. This is the perfect chance to find out. The ground shatters, a massive chasm opens up, and Jared lets out a high-pitched scream that echoes across the peaks. Darkness swallows them whole. The Royal Knight screams all the way down until crash. He lands hard before a sinister, ancient pathway. Yuri snaps his eyes open. He realizes he is unscathed, lying atop the knight who used his own body as a shield. As Yuri scrambles off, Jared groans in agony. Yuri instantly analyzes the situation. Jared used mana to reinforce his body upon impact, a heroic feat, but the strain is too much. The knight loses consciousness instantly. Moments later, Hernando descends gracefully, floating like a feather on the wind. He casually remarks that this dungeon is far deeper than anticipated. Yuri shoots him a look of pure ice. He mutters that the mage clearly prioritized his own skin over the safety of his prince. Caught red-handed, Hernando stammers, trying to weave a tapestry of weak excuses to cover his cowardice. But before he can defend himself, a bone-chilling sound stops him cold. The mage spins around, spotting a cursed presence in the shadows, and frantically warns Yuri. Yuri thinks it is a deflection, but Hernando is desperate. "It is a ghost!" he screams. The sheer terror in his voice finally snaps Yuri to attention, and he whips around. A nightmare manifests. An armored entity, leaking the aura of the grave, marches slowly toward them. The pressure is suffocating. Yuri locks eyes with the monster and instantly identifies the threat a Death Knight. He orders Jared to rise, but the knight is half dead to the world, groaning like a reanimated corpse. There is no time for gentleness. A swift kick to the ribs jolts the knight's soul back into his body. Jared gasps, seeing the abomination. Duty overrides fear as he throws himself in front of Yuri. Vowing to handle the undead warrior, Yuri remains calm. The Death Knight halts its advance, standing like an ominous statue directly before them. Yuri narrows his gaze, recalling the lore. These were once noble guardians, now resurrected with power far exceeding their living forms. Yet, he senses no bloodlust. Taking a gamble, Yuri decides to approach the monster with open hands. Jared looks at his liege as if he has gone mad, but Yuri is resolute. He explains the logic. Why would the Founder's eternal guards attack their own blood descendants? He stands tall before the undead titan, with the voice of a ruler. He declares his true name. The Death Knight stands frozen, processing the claim. Suddenly, it draws its massive blade. The air screams with danger as panic erupts. Doom arrives in a heartbeat. The blade descends upon the prince, who stands paralyzed, unable to flinch as death comes for him. The blade stops inches from taking his life, slamming into the ground and severing a lock of his hair in a silent warning. Hernando instantly collapses into a puddle of despair, wailing that the prince has met a gruesome end. He screams about the prince losing his head, but Yuri snaps at him to shut his mouth while the mage weeps over his ruined hairstyle. The dusty skeleton finally creaks its jaw open and observes that Yuri radiates the same overwhelming arrogance as the previous owner. Sheathing his blade, Yuri demands the undead warrior's identity, and the Death Knight reveals himself as Briel, a name that sends a shockwave through the group. Jared repeats the name, his voice trembling with utter disbelief. Hernando goes into full historian mode, explaining that this is the legendary hero who conquered the entire continent with his own two hands. He is the founding father of the Briel Kingdom, the first king to ever sit upon the throne. Yuri stands tall and asks if anyone else has reached this depth, and the Death Knight confirms he is the first, for only a true blood descendant can draw that sword. That confirms Yuri's suspicions instantly. This blade is the true ancestral heirloom, and he lifts the steel closer to feel the weight of history. The Death Knight casually mentions that he used to wield that very sword in his prime. That comment kills the mood. Yuri looks mildly annoyed at using secondhand gear, leaving the undead knight completely confused by his attitude. However, our protagonist simply apologizes for taking the king's property before dropping the act and asking why the founder brought him here. Yuri tightens his grip on the hilt, declaring his full name with royal authority and demanding the founder hand over his legacy. The Death Knight holds his gaze for a long, silent moment before slowly turning toward the glowing crystal. With dramatic flair, He announces that the time has finally come to fulfill his ancient duty. He promises to grant Yuri exactly what he came for, and the prince breaks into a cold sweat as he follows the undead king. Meanwhile, Jared stands there with a 1,000-yard stare, his brain completely fried by the supernatural overload. Realizing this royal guard gig is way above his pay grade, he freezes until Yuri barks an order that shatters his dissociation. The knight looks shaken, suddenly bombarded by jagged memories of a past life that should not even exist. He scratches his head, half convinced he has gone insane, but he screams a confirmation and sprints after his liege. The Death Knight steps up to the crystal and lowers himself like his ancient joints are rusting, striking a meditative pose as pure aura explodes from his bones. The crystal flares with blinding intensity, forcing the entire squad to shield their eyes from the divine radiance. Amidst the light, the skeleton's voice booms out, hoping the young prince proves truly worthy of the power. In the blink of an eye, Yuri is warped into a barren wasteland, spinning around in panic as he wonders what hellscape he has been thrown into. A silhouette appears on the horizon, and for a fleeting second, Yuri hopes it might be the founder himself coming to teach him. That hope dies instantly. The entity is not even human, and it is already charging at breakneck speed with a weapon in hand. Yuri barely raises his guard in time, blocking the heavy strike and grunting as the impact rattles his bones. He locks eyes with the blue glowing orb and realizes with horror that this construct is wielding a tangible sword made of pure mana. The transparent fighter points to the luminous core embedded in its chest, leaving Yuri baffled, but the creature is not done showing off. Brilliance begins to flow through its crystalline body, surging into the weapon until the blade ignites with blinding power. Yuri keeps his guard up as his mind races, realizing he is witnessing the true method of wielding mana itself. His confusion deepens when the entity suddenly stops and gestures at him again. He shouts at the thing, asking if it seriously wants him to mimic its moves in the middle of a death match. Scratching his head, Yuri mutters that the founder must have been completely out of his mind before he died. Throwing a novice into a lethal duel to learn mana manipulation by force is exactly the kind of twisted logic someone living a second life would come up with. Then it hits him. That sounds exactly like something he would do. Yuri crouches low and focuses his will, attempting to channel mana into his palm as he watches it flicker with a soft glow. He is stuck and cannot grasp the flow, so he raises his sword and yells at the faceless instructor that he still does not get it. He demands one more proper demonstration, and the being responds with a savage aura as it lifts its sword to strike again. In that split second, reality settles in. He has no choice but to evolve right here and now. He squares off against the warrior, swearing that when the Empire reveals its true colors to invade Briel, things will be different. He refuses to repeat the tragic failures of the past, and history will not loop on his watch. He vows to obliterate them completely this time, even if he has to burn his own life force to ash to do it. He tightens his death grip on the hilt, whispering that this must be the legendary swordsmanship of the first king. Yuri doesn't hesitate for a split second. He charges in at lightning speed, slashing with lethal concentration, vowing to absorb every technique thrown his way as his intense battle against the faceless fighter erupts once again. Meanwhile, Jared slowly opens his eyes, finding himself in a completely unfamiliar space. Scanning his surroundings with a look of pure confusion, he quickly realizes he is standing in what appears to be a training ground. He searches for any sign of life but comes up short, noting that the atmosphere here feels far too visceral to be a simple dream. Sensing something is horribly wrong, he clutches his sword tightly and roars into the void, demanding that whatever is hiding in the shadows drop the act and show itself immediately. Footsteps echo behind him. He spins around, blade primed for combat, but freezes in absolute shock when he comes face to face with a perfect mirror image of himself. He wonders aloud if this is the Death Knight's twisted idea of a trial. Regaining his composure, he calmly asks the copy for its name, and if it intends to play the role of Jared as well. Finally, the doppelganger parts its lips. It tells him he is foolish to fight against fate, a statement that throws Jared off balance. The copy smugly asks if he did not join the royal guards just to chase an easy life filled with riches and comfort. It adds a dark warning: stay far away from the third prince. It claims the harder he fights destiny, the more miserable his end will be. Jared narrows his eyes, absorbing the poison in silence. Taking a deep, steadying breath, he looks down at his blade. He realizes the old Jared might have agreed with those words, but that man is dead and gone. His mind flashes back to the brutal sparring matches with the prince, where his spirit was forged anew. A wide grin splits his face. He calls the fake out for being salty, starts waxing poetic like Shakespeare, and declares that once a blade is swung, the only job is to focus on the next strike. Lingering on the past will only destroy your mind. The fake Jared refuses to let that slide, and ignites his mana sword with a sneer, calling him arrogant. The clone sprints forward, launching a sharp jab, but the real Jared deflects it with effortless grace. As steel clashes against steel, Jared dissects the pattern instantly. He thinks about how pathetic this copy is, never taking risks, dumping every ounce of energy into defense. The clone leaps into the air, but Jared sees through the tactic before it even begins. He reflects on how painfully dull his past self used to be, then lands a devastatingly clean hit that sends the double crashing into the dirt. Jared exhales the breath of victory, but keeps his guard raised high. Predictably, the fake form begins to melt into a grotesque goo. The real Jared watches closely as it reshapes itself into a massive, towering sludge beast. He realizes the warm-up is over. The real fight has only just begun. The knight stares down the oversized monster, scoffing that it is just another loud brute. He silently prays that the prince is managing to survive his own hell. Readying his sword, he braces for impact, mentally cheering for Yuri to hang in there and seize the win. Meanwhile, back in the barren wasteland, the earth is scarred from countless strikes. Yuri lies motionless in a crater, appearing not to move an inch. The transparent entity looms over him, sword in hand, approaching with lethal menace in every step. Yuri remains limp, showing no reaction, but the faceless fighter shows no mercy. It raises its blade high and brings it down with catastrophic force, unleashing a massive explosion that shakes the battlefield to its core. However, the moment the transparent figure brings its sword crashing down, Yuri drops the axe and grips his hilt with iron determination. Flooding the steel with mana, he thrusts straight toward the being with acrobatic reflexes. The entity bends backward just in time to dodge, though the shockwave of the swing still triggers a massive mana explosion. As nimble as ever, the faceless fighter hops back a few steps. Yuri exhales sharply, finally stealing a precious second to fill his lungs. He wonders just how long this endless duel has been raging on. He admits that his last move was reckless and stupid, but the way he slashed, the way mana surged through his blade, and the desperation of fighting for his life changed everything. That was the key. He stares down at the blade in his hand, now pulsing with raw power, and senses a legendary breakthrough. But before he can soak in the victory, his attention snaps back as the transparent warrior begins to fracture. Its sword splinters into fragments as its body starts breaking apart like shattered glass. Yuri understands instantly. The mentor's time is up. Dust begins to peel from its limbs. Just before fading, it raises a hand in a final, silent wave. The prince watches the remains scatter into the wind, a strange smile tugging at his lips. He closes his eyes and quietly thanks the faceless master, right as his own form begins to dissolve into light. Eventually, Yuri groans. He slowly opens his eyes, blinking away the haze as he looks around in dazed confusion. His companions are waking up beside him, looking like they have just returned from their own personal wars. It finally clicks. They are back. The Death Knight watches them and remarks smugly that it seems they all enjoyed their nice little dream. Yuri's mind still reels from the shockwave. Fighting through the haze, he manages to stammer out a single question. What in the world was that power? The answer chills him. This wasn't an accident. It was the Grand Founder's master plan, a secret inheritance left behind for the one descendant strong enough to reach this abyss. A memory from his previous life flashes like a warning light. In that timeline, the Empire completely obliterated Sword Mountain. That destruction explains everything. No one from the Bao bloodline ever stood a chance to claim this legacy before because it was buried under rubble, but Yuri isn't satisfied. He presses the spectral figure. Did the founder himself wield this mana technique? The Death Knight shakes his head. No, the founder never used it. He created it. This was his final masterpiece. After traversing the globe and conquering every martial art known to man, he fused the deadliest skills into one ultimate technique. And Yuri, he is the very first to inherit this god-tier power. The prince frowns, his mind racing. If this power is so great, why didn't Eric simply pass it down the main royal bloodline from the start? The skeleton's hollow eyes seem to stare into the future. The dungeon only unseals when the world is on the brink. The fact it opened now means a catastrophe is approaching. Yuri demands to know what that timing implies, but the knight shuts him down instantly. It is not his place to reveal the future. Yuri must decipher the threads of fate himself. Intrigued, Yuri turns his gaze back to the blade. He asks for its name. The Death Knight answers with a voice like a tomb slamming shut soul severance. The name echoes in Yuri's mind, heavy with destiny, but there is no time to process it. The knight commands him to kneel. The specter's aura explodes, crushing down like a mountain. This isn't a request. It is the transfer of a legacy. Instinct takes over. Yuri drops to his knees without a second thought. The Death Knight places a cold, skeletal hand on the boy's head and begins the ancient rite of the vow. Never fear those who stand against you. The prince's reply is instant and ironclad. Yes. The voice booms louder. Follow your conviction no matter the obstacle. Fulfill your duty until your final breath. Suddenly, the skeletal grip tightens. The knight jerks Yuri's head back, forcing eye contact with the abyss. Etch this into your soul. A warrior of Briel never discards their honor, even if the price is life itself. With those thunderous words, the Death Knight's form begins to crumble into stardust. His mission finally complete. His voice fades into the void. This is the Oath of Briel. Silence falls, leaving Yuri alone to stare into the fading darkness. The next morning, peace is shattered. The maid bursts in, ripping the curtains open. Rise and shine, your highness. Yuri groans from the safety of his blankets. She immediately questions his fatigue apparently. He stumbled home in the dead of night. She warns him sharply, don't even think about closing those eyes again. Yuri stifles a yawn, concocting a cover story. He claims he stopped by the royal archives, hence the late arrival. The maid looks suspicious, asking what could be so important. He simply shrugs. He was hunting for a very specific record. But it wasn't a lie. While digging through the dusty scrolls last night, Yuri uncovered a shocking truth. The records mentioned the founder had a brother, a man who discarded his honor and vanished from history without a single trace. Gazing at the blade now, the pieces click into place. That disgraced brother was the Death Knight, and soul severance was originally his weapon. The maid snaps him back to reality. He needs to dress. Now the king is waiting for him. Yuri's heart nearly stops in his chest. She adds the kicker right after Lord Hernando met with his majesty. The king immediately summoned Yuri. The timing is too perfect. Cold sweat breaks out on Yuri's back. He mentally curses Hernando to hell and back as the memories of last night flood in. He can still see Hernando's smug face, looking him dead in the eye and promising to report every single detail to the king. Yuri had asked if that was necessary. Hernando just smirked and said he felt like it. Yuri clutches his head in despair. The snitch definitely spilled everything. Later, inside the gleaming royal hall, Yuri stands beneath a crystal chandelier that costs more than a small kingdom. He bows, announcing his presence. I have arrived as summoned, father. The king sits on the throne, scratching his head. He looks at his son like a puzzle he can't quite solve. He doesn't mince words. Hernando told him everything. The king launches into a tirade about sneaking out and how, miraculously, his son stumbled into a secret dungeon and walked out with the founder's lost legacy. Yuri doesn't bother with denials. He looks his father in the eye. It is all true. That honesty doesn't save him. The king rises from his throne, his presence dominating the room. He asks if the sword is real. Yuri confirms it again. His majesty descends the steps, slow and deliberate. The air in the room grows heavy. He states that whispers have reached his ear, whispers that Yuri has changed. The king narrows his eyes, rattling off a list of names like an indictment. Everyone has noticed the shift in Yuri's personality, and Hernando's report was the final nail in the coffin. He places a heavy hand on his son's head. It feels less like a comfort and more like a shackle. Speak. What exactly happened to trigger this transformation? Yuri gulps, his grip tightening on soul severance until his knuckles turn white. He remains silent. The king refuses to back down. He leans in closer, his gaze piercing. Do you have no answer? Yuri stammers, but the king cuts him off. Why are you hesitating? The prince's voice trembles as he replies. He admits he is terrified because his majesty has been clenching his fist with bone-crushing intensity this entire time. Realizing his intimidation tactics are working too well, the king loosens his iron grip. He commands the boy to stop stalling and spit out the truth immediately. Yuri finally steels his nerves and opens up. He confesses that a nightmare shook him to his core. A dream where he committed a sin so vile it could never be forgiven. The king's expression remains stone cold. He looks unconvinced, repeating the phrase slowly while using the prince's full government name to demand absolute seriousness. Father Bell cuts straight to the heart of the matter. He demands, what was this unforgivable act? What could you have possibly done to trigger such a drastic change in your soul? Yuri locks eyes with the imposing monarch. Silence hangs heavy in the air for a long, agonizing second before he whispers the truth. His sin was failing to protect Briel until the bitter end. In that nightmare, the kingdom was plunged into the chaotic abyss of war. Countless innocent lives were extinguished without a shred of mercy. The prince describes how he tried to turn the tide. He tried to stand his ground against the darkness, but he failed completely and utterly. After the fall of Briel, he fled in shame, stripped of his honor. He ended his days as a miserable, broken man who died a dog's death in the dirt. Yuri clutches his chest, the phantom pain still lingering. He explains that when he woke from that hellscape, the necklace his mother once gave him had vanished into thin air. That was the moment fear took root. He began to suspect this wasn't just a dream, but a dire warning sent from beyond the grave by his mother herself. The king looks slightly unsettled by this revelation. His gaze sharpens as he asks exactly which force was powerful enough to burn their kingdom to ash in this vision. Panic flares in Yuri's chest. He knows he cannot speak the truth yet. It is far too early to reveal the Empire as the true enemy. There is still a chance, however slim, that the invasion can be delayed. With the right moves on the chessboard, perhaps it can be stopped entirely. So he plays it safe. He lies, claiming he doesn't know the enemy's identity. Only that a mysterious black army emerged from the void to swallow them whole. The king lets out a quiet, heavy sigh. A faint smile touches his lips as he reassures his son it was likely just a nightmare. Perhaps a mother's warning, but nothing more. However, there is pride in his eyes. He is simply glad that Yuri has finally decided to step up and become a man. Yuri doesn't share this relief. Deep down, he knows the truth. He isn't fighting for maturity, he is fighting for redemption, desperate to erase the sin of abandoning Briel and its people to rot. But his dark train of thought is severed instantly. The king shifts his stance. His majesty straightens up, his presence expanding to fill the room. He declares that there is something else that must be dealt with, right here and right now. The king crosses his arms, his voice commanding absolute obedience as he orders Yuri to draw his sword. Yuri Briel is a prodigy who likely slashed his way out of the womb. He is a walking disaster with a blade, a monster who dominated everything and everyone who dared to stand in his path. His name was carved into the history of the continent through sheer unmatched skill. It was raw talent and martial mastery that had no business existing in a single human being. Back in the Golden Age, people spoke in whispers about the top 10 strongest warriors alive, and Fior was the kind of apex predator who sat comfortably at the very peak of that legendary list. As Yuri stands in this training hall facing this living legend, reality crashes down on him. His old man is likely the greatest swordmaster on the entire continent. He glances around the room in pure awe. He mutters that he has never even been allowed to step foot inside his father's personal sanctuary before today. Fior remarks coldly that he never expected any of his sons to possess the talent for swordsmanship in the first place. Yuri grits his teeth at the insult, muttering that he does have talent. The king just lets out a long, tired sigh, repeating the word talent with heavy skepticism. Then, faster than the eye can blink, the king raises his blade. He aims it directly at the prince, catching him completely off guard. The king begins listing physical attributes, speed, reflexes, instinct. He asks if possessing these traits automatically makes someone the greatest swordsman under the heavens. The blade hovers inches from Yuri's throat, radiating death. The king answers his own question. None of those are the answer. The most important factor is the drive. The burning will that pushes a swordsman to shatter his own limits. His gaze sharpens, growing heavier than a mountain. He explains that true strength lies beyond mere duty or the weight of expectation. Suddenly, the atmosphere screams in protest. The king's eyes begin to glow with a terrifying crimson light. Yuri's body goes rigid. He senses the sheer, crushing pressure rolling off his father. The aura around the king transforms into something suffocating and terrifying. Fior lowers his sword, the pressure receding slightly. He admits he cannot put the feeling into proper words, so he simply calls it the sword's calling. Yuri stares in shock, slowly lowering his own weapon. He asks quietly if that is just another word for destiny. Fior closes his eyes. Considering the weight of the word, he agrees that, yes, it could be called exactly that. Yuri falls silent as his thoughts spiral into chaos. In his previous life, he was never destined to wield a sword. He wonders what has shifted in the fabric of fate. His eyes flick toward the steel in his hands. He stares at his reflection in the cold metal, searching for answers that refuse to appear. Fior interrupts his internal crisis with a question that cuts deep. Should Yuri even be holding that sword at all? He pushes harder, demanding to know if Yuri can hear the sword's calling. Would he still cling to that blade even while staring directly into the face of death? Yuri is shaken to his core. He stammers, struggling to force an answer out, admitting that he doesn't feel anything at all. But his honesty is met with the ice-cold gaze of a predator. Fear grips Yuri's heart, and he takes a step back, his legs wobbling beneath the weight of his father's disappointment. Suddenly, a suffocating malice surrounds him, it feels as though 1,000 evil eyes are burning into his very soul, sending his mind into a violent spiral. The darkest memories of his past life crash over him like a tsunami, he hears the desperate screams of loyal comrades begging him to run, their voices drowning in the blood of the fallen. They cried out for their prince, but he stood frozen, his throat constricted, unable to offer even a single word in return. Reality warps and twists, in a blink, he is dragged back to that cursed day, standing in the center of an inferno where his world turned to ash. The Imperial legions march forward with ruthless precision, they trample the lifeless body of Hernandos, grinding his sacrifice into the dirt. Innocent civilians are butchered without mercy, and there stands the older Yuri, a helpless spectator forced to watch his kingdom bleed. A gasp tears from his throat as horror sets in, why is the kingdom of Briel burning all over again? Through the smoke, a soldier's voice rings out, they're the third prince, the last survivor of the Briel bloodline. Enemy blades close in from every shadow. Yuri stares down at his own hands, watching them tremble with the phantom tremors of the past. The brutal truth hits him like a warhammer. Somehow, he has been dragged back to the exact moment of Briel's absolute ruin. The capital is consumed by flames. And the entire Imperial army is on a hunt for the head of Prince Yuri of Briel. His mind reels in chaos. He is back in the nightmare, hunted once more as the last heir, the only one who can restore the lost honor of his clan. He stands rooted to the spot, stunned into silence. How is this even possible? The Imperial soldiers grin, their bloodlust spiking. They are itching to mount a prince's head on a pike. An assassin lunges from the blind spot, aiming for a lethal decapitation. But Yuri senses the killing intent crawling up his spine and raises his blade in the nick of time. He pivots, dodging the strike with the grace of a veteran. Steel clashes against steel as the real battle begins. Sparks fly as raw strength collides. Yuri holds his ground, and with a devastating swing, he cleaves the Imperial soldier's weapon and his body clean in half. One threat eliminated. But before he can draw breath, the roar of his own knights fills the air as they throw themselves into the fray. They scream at Yuri to flee, sacrificing their bodies to buy him mere seconds of life. He screams, refusing to leave them behind. But they beg him to go, falling one by one to the Imperial blades amidst the roaring flames. Yuri's vision spins. Is this a twisted nightmare or hell itself? Is Briel truly doomed to this tragic fate forever? He feels trapped in a loop of helplessness, realizing that for this memory, there is no other end. Yet, even facing the inevitable, something inside him snaps, a seal within his soul shatters. The last prince of Briel stands alone before the burning ruins, a kingdom he failed to save. The Imperial forces charge from the rear, certain that the royal bloodline ends here. Yuri watches them come, his knuckles turning white around the hilt. He knows the outcome, but he has made his vow. No matter the odds, no matter the despair, he swears he will never fear the enemy again. With infernal determination burning in his eyes, Prince Yuri turns to face the horde. A primal voice echoes from his core, commanding him to stand his ground. The voice drills the truth into his mind. He has a duty to Briel, and he will fight until the last drop of blood leaves his body. Yuri grips his blade and explodes forward. He becomes a blur of death, his strikes slicing through iron armor and flesh in a single fluid motion. The Imperial scum drop dead instantly. A fountain of blood sprays across Yuri's face, nearly blinding him with the crimson price of war. But even with vision blurred by blood, his instincts are sharp. He catches a thrusting spear with his bare hand. Seizing the opening, Yuri drives his sword deep into the soldier's gut, finishing him instantly. Gasping for air, a voice whispers that his time is up, urging him to surrender to death. But Yuri screams in defiance, his voice raw with pain and power. Briel will never discard its honor, even if I must die 1,000 deaths. Fueled by fury, he lunges at the army like a demon beast. He is ready to carve their graves right here to fulfill his duty to the Briel name. Suddenly, the soft mumble of young Yuri breaks the trance. I will protect Briel's honor until the end. Fior's voice cuts through the haze like a blade. Yuri, can you hear me? The shout snaps him back to reality. The shaken boy blinks, finding himself staring not at a burning battlefield, but at the dark armor of his father, Fior, who is gently calming him down. The moment he touched that sword, a tragic memory violently resurfaced, / now, his small hand is drenched in cold sweat. Looking into his son's intense eyes, Fior realizes his mistake, / the boy isn't just a child, he's ready to wield the sword for real. Little Yuri looks up and smiles, his resolve set, / I've made my decision, father, / but then he pauses, noticing the terrified expression on the old man's face. By the look of it, anyone would think Yuri had just signed his own death warrant. The boy tugs at his father's sleeve, breaking the tension, / Dad, chill out, you look like you've seen a ghost. The Duke is caught completely off guard, / he stands stunned, amazed that his son has the guts to give him a reality check after such a terrifying ordeal. Little Yuri bursts into laughter, proclaiming himself a peerless genius, but his celebration is cut short. His father's face twitches with annoyance right before a ruthless chop to the head silences the prodigy. Later that morning, the sun rises on a new day, bathing the training grounds in soft, golden light. A gentle breeze whispers through the fields, masking the intensity to come. Bernard strolls onto the scene, his sharp eyes catching sight of young Yuri. The boy is nursing a throbbing bump on his head with a bag of ice. Amused, he asks whose brilliant idea earned such a reward. Yuri casually grumbles, "My father." Bernard shakes his head, chuckling that the old man must be feeling generous to let him off with just a bump. But the laughter dies down quickly. Bernard's expression hardens as he issues a warning. From this moment on, the kid gloves come off. Training is about to become a living hell. Yuri doesn't flinch. He's been waiting for this. Reflecting on the past, he realizes the sword demon's presence in Briel isn't random. It's tied deeply to his father. Seizing the opening, Yuri probes for the truth. He asks if Bernard accepted a special condition to remain in Briel, perhaps a duel with his father. The old man doesn't even hesitate before answering. Exactly. Yuri pushes further, removing that condition from the equation. If not for that duel, would you have still stayed? The answer is a cold, flat no. Bernard laughs as Yuri calls him heartless, fully aware the little prince is desperate to keep him around. However, the old master offers a sliver of hope. He might consider the offer. If Yuri can provide a compelling enough reason. Give me something tempting, Bernard implies. Something that makes these old bones forget their wanderlust. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts. Bernard locks eyes with him, piercing through to his soul. Do you truly desire the way of the sword? Little Yuri freezes, shaken to his core by the specific vibe the old man emits. The kid is terrified, but Bernard is lost in thought. You can practically see the gears turning. He's cooking up a scheme in that head of his. And honestly, he is pretty curious to see how this gamble turns out. The pressure is suffocating. After all, standing before him is the legendary sword demon. Yet, the old man just shrugs. It's fine if you're incompetent. I prefer a blank canvas. He agrees to take it into consideration. Yuri smirks, noting that the old standards won't be of much help here. He draws his blade, the air humming with energy. He isn't just swinging metal, he's showing him a style infused with pure mana. The mana flows through the steel itself. Bernard is stunned. In all his years, he's seen mana coat a blade, but never become one with it. This defies all common sense. Yuri explains the catch. This is exactly why it's so hard to pass down. It will always end up incomplete for anyone else. But Bernard surprises him with a wild grin. I'm fine with that. He is willing to take the technique even if it is flawed. That becomes his new condition to stay in Briel. He is confident he can grasp at least a fragment of its power. Yuri is impressed by the old monster's confidence. The deal is sealed. Bernard is officially staying in Briel, just as they agreed. With the negotiations settled, Bernard commands, "Show me something real," and drops into his combat stance. Yuri Briel grips his sword, unleashing his Simhunchum technique, but right in the middle of the strike, Bernard casually drops a bombshell. I never actually planned on leaving, kid. His Majesty already hired me for another 10 years. The revelation hits Yuri like a meteor. The kid realizes he just got played, completely manipulated. Before he can even scream, Bernard smirks. Focus. You're supposed to be attacking, fed up with waiting. Yuri decides to strike first. This sly old bag is seriously getting on his nerves. He blocks Bernard's counter with all his might. Steel crashes against steel in a symphony of destruction as their blades collide. Later that evening, little Yuri lies on his bed, drowning in a flood of thoughts. He can feel it, the timeline is shifting. This isn't the same tragic future where Briel burned to ash because of his mistakes. He hasn't made his big move yet, but Bernard staying is proof that destiny is rewriting itself. The future always felt like smoke, uncertain and out of reach, but now it is solidifying, changing little by little. Even so, Yuri knows it's not enough. A dark fire burns in his heart. He is fully determined to bring the entire empire to its knees. The kid is ready to conquer fate. Suddenly, Medina appears out of the blue, praying to the gods that Yuri isn't planning more trouble. Curious, Yuri asks what other scheme she is hiding up her sleeve. Ina, clearly used to his antics, rolls her eyes. You always have some excuse to ask for help, don't you? Then, she drops the news. The Elder Council meets tomorrow. Don't tell me you forgot. She sighs, clearly exhausted by his endless shenanigans. His father casually adds that Yuri will be joining the session, a piece of information that is completely news to him. Ina reminds him that it starts first thing in the morning, and the entire council will be watching. Just then, she grabs little Yuri's hand, her eyes sparkling with dangerous sweetness. It'll be full of scary old men, she warns. Please, try not to punch anyone this time. He laughs nervously, assuring her there is nothing to worry about. Relax, I'm a changed man. He promises Ina he will behave, but the next morning, the council hall is a battlefield. The first thing Yuri notices is the overwhelming wall of hostility. No doubt about it, Ina was absolutely right. Duke Gennard is the first to attack. He brings immediate attention to the prince's cultivation, strongly opposing the idea of royalty learning such an unverified mana technique. What began as a sacred council to discuss the fate of the nation, and had rotted into a farce, serving as nothing more than a blockade against the royal throne itself. Prince Yuri finally grasped the bitter truth of why his father had shunned this snake pit of a council. Duke Gennard, the Lord of West, sneered across the table, insisting Yuri shackle himself to the traditional bull method. A loyal royalist struck back, claiming the so-called unverified technique was the founder's own legacy, but the Duke demanded cold, hard proof. Sparks flew in the chamber. The royalist was visibly incensed that a mere duke would dare question the prince's conviction. But Gennard played the concerned uncle card perfectly, arguing that this entire interrogation was out of genuine fear for the prince's safety. Yuri almost laughed. The realm's elders were bickering over his internal mana cultivation like market vendors haggling over fish. It was a dark comedy. The same man who bowed his head to the emperor after the fall of Briel now spoke with such serpentine grace. Sickeningly ironic. The duke then turned his gaze to Saint Ed, the captain of the royal guard, demanding his input. Saint walked the razor's edge. He admitted uncertainty. Every mana art had its own affinities, and every warrior was different. The Duke pounced like a predator. He twisted the captain's doubt into a weapon to discard the founder's method entirely. The royalists tried to salvage the situation, arguing that power comes in many forms and each method holds value. But the Duke's lapdog barked back instantly, accusing the royalist of gambling with the prince's life. The air in the room froze. Yuri felt the malice tightening around his throat. In seconds, the entire council had turned against him. If he surrendered now, all his efforts would be wasted. He would have to shatter his cultivation and rebuild his core from the ashes. But he had already walked the path. The Simon the Heart Soul was already etched deeply into his very being. Yuri stood paralyzed, words failing him as the crushing weight of their judgment loomed like a mountain. Suddenly, a voice sliced through the suffocating silence. Sharp, arrogant. You lot sure know how to run your mouths. Heads snapped around. Free Baron Calcio Arancha stepped into the fray, shattering the tension with a single sentence. A smirk played on his lips as he addressed the room. Quick question for the High Lords who here has actually killed an orc. Silence fell. All eyes locked onto Calcio. Uneasy whispers began to ripple through the noble ranks like a virus. Duke Gennard narrowed his eyes. Sensing a threat, he demanded rank and title, trying to crush this intruder with status alone. Calcio didn't flinch. He stepped up and introduced himself simply as a free baron, wearing the title like a badge of honor. The Duke recoiled, visibly offended that such a low-ranking noble would dare breathe the same air as the Elders' Council. Calcio shrugged. He admitted he hadn't planned to be here either, until Count Sidor personally ordered him to attend. Count Sidor. Yuri's eyes widened. That name hit the room like a thunderclap, awakening old memories. The Iron Wall of Briel, the border count who lived and breathed on the blood-soaked front lines, a living legend of the battlefield. And now, his shadow loomed over this political circus. Yuri was baffled. Sidor despised politics. Why would a wolf send a representative to a meeting of sheep? The royalist voiced the question burning in everyone's mind before Yuri could speak. Why exactly did the border count send you? Calcio grinned like a shark. The count wanted me to watch you arrogant nobles talk big about politics without lifting a finger. After witnessing this farce, Calcio laughed. He finally understood why Sidor had sent him alone. His tone dropped, becoming deadly serious. On the real battlefield, your fancy mana theories mean nothing. Empire's Lion Fang, Briel's tradition, useless. It is the warrior holding the blade that matters. He turned to Yuri. What say you, Prince? Emboldened, Yuri stepped forward. His voice rang out with steel-like resolve. He would master the Founder's art. He couldn't understand why his path to power was even up for debate. Prince Bull made his decree. No matter what the snakes whispered, he would pursue the Founder's mana method to the end. Calcio nodded in approval. The sword-bearing prince has chosen his path. The Founder's will runs through him. He glared at the council. Most of you in this room have neither the authority nor the right to speak on this. It does not concern paper tigers who hide behind desks. He drove the dagger home. If you have never stepped onto a battlefield, keep your mouth shut. Duke Gennard scoffed, trying to regain control. The Free Baron certainly lacks manners. Calcio's smile was razor sharp. Slaying orcs tends to wash away etiquette. I hope the Duke can overlook my bluntness. Calcio circles back to the heart of the matter, demanding to know who among them has actually spilled the blood of an orc. The question hangs in the air, plunging the room into a heavy, suffocating silence. He keeps the pressure crushing down, reminding them that ravenous monsters do not care about the specifics of a mana technique before they strike. His intense aura has the entire room shifting uneasily. Duke Gennard's lackey concedes to Calcio's point, but quickly pivots to insist that Yuri is still just a child lacking the wisdom of experience. Yuri refuses to let that slide. He fires back instantly, challenging the man and asking if he is truly questioning a prince's judgment right now. He reminds them all that his mana circulation method is not something that can simply be discarded or rewritten on a whim. Calcio steps in as his shield, declaring that Yuri is not the type to fold. He asks the council if they honestly intend to rip the mana core out of the boy's body by force. The lackey's anger flares up, but Calcio remains as cold as ice, pointing out just how pathetic and pointless this entire debate has become. Little Yuri is practically becoming a fan of the commander, flashing Calcio a grateful smile for defending him against the wolves. Calcio cuts through the noise, stating they are practically harming the prince's well-being by wasting time on this nonsense. It must be nice for the royal capital to have the luxury of sitting around chattering while the world burns. That insult is the final straw for Duke Gennard, shattering his composure completely. Feeling the sting of the verbal slap, he snaps at Calcio, accusing the border forces of sucking the budget dry while conveniently remaining silent about their results. That strikes a raw nerve. Calcio's gaze turns razor sharp as he asks if the border is only allowed to speak up once 100 people have been slaughtered. He drops the grim reality of the front lines on them, revealing that reports of soldiers dying in the mud come in every single day. It is baffling to think that not a single person in this room has spared a minute to acknowledge the lives lost protecting them. He reveals that on the very day he departed, news arrived that 4 soldiers had fallen. One was a friend he had shared a meal with that same morning. His voice lowers as he confesses that he wrapped the burial cloth around his friend with his own hands before coming here. He drives the point home. Orcs do not know the meaning of rest. They are a race forged in blood, born only for slaughter and war. His words unlock a memory for Yuri, recalling the bitter conflict between the Bull faction and the Duchy of Klein in the past. That internal chaos created a crack in their defenses, giving the orcs a perfect opening to cross the border and unleash havoc. Yuri asks if the situation has changed recently, and Calcio admits that things have become far more terrifying than usual. Yuri presses about the presence of Klein soldiers at the border, but Calcio reveals the guards suddenly retreated, leaving the line exposed. That betrayal led to nearby villages being reduced to ash, with the innocent villagers either dragged off as slaves or butchered where they stood. Yuri is left wondering if this is the spark of a civil war, or if Duke Gennard's third son has committed a grave, unforgivable error. The room falls into a heavy silence at the grim news, everyone wondering how the young prince is maintaining his composure under such weight. Wasting no more time, Prince Yuri abruptly brings the meeting to an end and rises to his feet. Duke Gennard tries to interject, but Yuri shuts him down cold. He mocks the so-called noble for obsessing over trivial theories while real blood is being spilled. He tells them to focus their energy on actual threats, like fortifying the defenses against the Duchy of Klein and the rampaging orc hordes. With that, the kid delivers a crushing blow to the pride of every greedy schemer in the room, telling them to stop fixating on a teenage boy and start doing their jobs. Later, news of the chaotic council meeting reaches the ears of Count Sidor as Calcio fills him in on the third prince's performance. He reports to Sidor that the boy seems like a completely transformed person compared to before. Sidor asks for an honest assessment, and Calcio simply replies that the prince possessed eyes that did not look weak or wavering. Intrigued, Sidor orders Calcio to keep a close watch on the third prince and dig into his secrets. With that command, the crystal communication fades to black. As the connection cuts, Calcio stands alone, haunted by the thought of soldiers dying in the mud while the capital enjoys this sickening peace. His brooding is interrupted when he spots the third prince slipping out of the palace grounds. Hernando, acting on Yuri's orders, has snuck out with him, the two of them looking like a pair of mischievous runaways. Yuri teases his companion, asking if he used to run away from home 3 times a day. Hernando laughs it off, claiming the title of a distinguished delinquent. Yuri is baffled by the clumsy knight's excitement, considering Hernando has the freedom to stroll through the city whenever he pleases. But Hernando lives for the thrill of rebellion, finding a special joy in the forbidden act of sneaking a royal prince out of the castle. He asks for the spicy details of their plan, but Yuri shrugs, claiming nothing too wild will happen while he is in charge. However, Hernando pushes for the truth, and Yuri finally admits they are heading to the largest illegal casino in the capital. Hernando freezes, completely stunned. He truly believed Yuri wasn't planning anything reckless today. Now the prince is practically begging him for directions, claiming this mission is entirely for the sake of Briel. That name flips a switch in Hernando. His face lights up with manic excitement as he happily agrees to lead the way, eager to turn that casino upside down. In the chronicle of Yuri Bol's past life, certain names echoed with the weight of destiny, legends that shaped the era. First, the king of the underworld, a ruthless loan shark who ruled the shadows. Second, the titan of commerce who forged the continent's greatest trading empire. Then, there was the fear that choked the streets of Briel, born from the blade of a legendary assassin who claimed the head of a crime lord. The man who died by that blade was Goryo. But fate has been rewritten. Goryo, the underworld's apex predator, stands alive and well before little Yuri. He bows, claiming it is an honor to host such highborn guests in his casino. Yuri's eyes narrow. He realizes instantly Goryo didn't come down for charity. He knows exactly who they are, the third prince and the royal mage. Yuri cuts through the pleasantries with a cold edge. He isn't here to roll dice. Goryo catches the shift in the air and slides effortlessly into business mode. Hernando, however, looks like he's been stabbed in the back. The mage came for the thrill of the poker tables, not political chess games. One sharp glare from Yuri silences his complaints. Goryo leans in. Here to borrow it. Yuri frames it as an investment opportunity. But the crime lord sees straight through the veil. Child prince ignoring the royal banks to build a secret slush fund that reeks of ambition. The fact that he came to the underworld makes this dangerous and lucrative. Goryo senses a grand scheme churning behind the boy's eyes, but when he pries for details, Yuri shuts him down cold. Asking questions, Yuri reminds him, voice dripping with authority, is not part of your contract. The mobster recoils, sensing the danger, and quickly apologizes. He knows when to fold. Yuri leans forward, dominating the room despite being the borrower. Goryo relents, asking only one thing: what is the fund for? The answer is simple: Magranza, a rare spice from the Klein Mountains. Yuri is betting his life that demand is about to obliterate supply. Hernando sweats. The pace is moving too fast, the stakes rising too high for his comfort. Goryo knows Magranza is the heart of high-end perfumery, but betting a fortune on it, that's a gamble even he hesitates to take. Yuri's confidence, however, is absolute. Hernando is skeptical. Civil war is brewing in the Klein Principality, and orcs are ravaging the trade routes. Logic dictates the trade will die. He begins to suspect the prince is playing a smaller game. Perhaps the kid is just trying to corner a local market before the world catches on. But the aura surrounding Yuri suggests otherwise. He isn't throwing darts in the dark. Even Goryo realizes Yuri Bol is no naive noble playing shopkeeper. The kid is calculated, sharp as a razor, and possesses knowledge that shouldn't exist. Yuri begins to crunch the numbers, not as a prince, but as a ruthless investor dissecting his prey. Goryo studies him, searching for a flaw, before finally pushing the contract forward. Yuri signs with a satisfied smile. The trap is set. Hernando stares in disbelief. The sheer audacity to borrow a fortune from the king of the underworld leaves him reeling. He grumbles, whining about the lack of gambling and the secrecy, salty that he was kept in the dark, but Yuri ignores him. He knew the mage would have dragged him straight to the king if he had whispered a word of this. The money is secured. Now, he has business to handle at the guild. As for the Magranza spice, the profit is already written in stone. Yuri knows the future. The first casualty of the looming civil war will be the alchemist. The only man alive who knows how to process Magranza and the trusted aide to Duke Klein. When he falls, the supply chain breaks. Until a successor appears, Yuri will hold the monopoly. He can name any price he desires. This operation requires a specific touch. They arrive at a dilapidated, sketchy shack that looks ready to collapse. Hernando judges the filth silently, but Yuri steps up and bangs on the door. Would get out here. Hernando insists the official guild would be smarter, but then the door creaks open. A figure steps out, completely clueless, asking what the hell is going on. Yuri wastes no time. He introduces himself and drops the offer. I have a job for you. The royal mage nearly loses his mind. The third prince stooping this low to hire a nobody from the slums. He rips into Yuri's judgment, baffled that the fate of the Magranza trade rests on this shabby little shop. But Yuri just grins, a wicked light dancing in his eyes. To the world, this looks like a mistake. But Yuri knows the truth. Wood is destined to become the greatest merchant the continent has ever seen. While Goryo built his empire on dirty tricks and blood, Ira, this merchant, values his word above gold. Little Yuri suppresses a creepy smirk. In the past timeline, this man only reached the status of a legendary merchant. But this time, Yuri intends to turn him into a full-blown myth. Hernando, struggling to keep up, asks if the madness is finally over. Yuri shrugs, his gaze set on the horizon. One last thing to handle. Hernando is forced to chase after him again. The plan is in motion. The loan shark of the underworld and the god of trade are now in the palm of his hand. Now, only one final piece remained to complete the puzzle. The duo arrived at a desolate street where beggars clawed at each other over scraps of food. Yuri knew the target was close. His gaze sharpened, finally locking onto a group of children amidst the squalor. Third Prince, Yuri Briel, stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the woman protecting them, the very woman who had slaughtered Goryo in his previous life. The legendary assassin, Asana. Suspicion clouded the future killer's eyes. Why would a royal prince be strolling through the filth of the slums? Yuri sensed her killing intent and raised his hands. He assured her quickly he came with benevolence, not malice. He claimed he was merely here to offer aid to the destitute. He turned to Hernando, signaling for the package they had prepared. The mage clutched the sack, visibly pained to part with it, but under the prince's command, he surrendered the heavy bag, filled to the brim with gold coins. Yuri's gaze shifted, spotting a trembling little girl cowering behind Asana's legs. The child shrank away from the noble strangers. Yuri knew the truth immediately. This girl was the catalyst. The reason Asana had sold her soul to Goryo in the past timeline. She had been forced to embrace the devil just to afford the treatment for the girl's terminal illness. Like all who dealt with that ruthless loan shark, Asana's life had spiraled into absolute ruin from that moment on. Desperation drove her into the darkness, birthing a cold-blooded assassin. She became a terror of the underworld, the market's most lethal blade. But Yuri stood here now to sever that tragic fate before it could begin. Without a word of explanation, he pressed the heavy sack of coins into Asana's stunned hands. He ordered her to take the child to the temple for immediate healing. When she stammered, asking the price for such a fortune, his answer was brief. With a dazzling smile, he asked for a single thing. Remember my name, Yuri Briel, the third prince of this kingdom. The transaction complete, they turned their backs on the slums, leaving the suffocating gloom behind. As they escaped the misery of the district, Hernando was baffled. Why throw a fortune at a random beggar? Yuri smirked. To him, this was the most lucrative investment for the future imaginable. In a single night, he had forged unbreakable bonds with three figures who would rule the world in a few years. He had the aces up his sleeve, but the deck wasn't full yet. There was one more person he needed to secure in his corner. He glanced at Hernando, his tone shifting. He asked the carefree mage what vision he had witnessed inside the founding king's tomb. Hernando let out a wry chuckle. In that dream world, he had done nothing but gamble his life away. Yuri blinked, unprepared for such absurdity. The mage explained he had staked his very life on a game at the Empire's Barthleys casino. It sounded ridiculous, but for a degenerate like Hernando, a gambling den was truly his battlefield of choice. Visions aside, Yuri's expression turned serious. He ordered Hernando to bury everything that happened tonight. Absolute silence. Not even the king could know. Just as the prince predicted, the summons came. The court mage stood before the throne to report on the prince's nocturnal activities. Despite their stealth, the king's eyes were everywhere. He knew they had slipped out under the cover of darkness. Hernando didn't bother with denial. When pressed for details, he painted a picture of a victim claiming Yuri had practically dragged him out of the palace. He confessed with practiced ease they had gone straight to the capital's largest casino. In his mind, memories of their shady dealings with the cutthroat loan shark replayed vividly. Naturally, King Fiora assumed the worst. The prodigal prince, wasting gold and time at the tables. Summoning his most innocent smile, the mage lied through his teeth, confirming they had squandered coin. Surprisingly, the king seemed neither shocked nor angry. To sell the fabrication, Hernando added a pitiful detail: he had lost every copper lent to the prince because he was terrible at cards. The king pressed for more. Images of their bizarre crusade flashed through Hernando's mind. Taking gold from a crime lord, funneling it into a dying merchant guild, and donating the rest to a nameless orphan in the slums. Of course, Hernando swallowed those dangerous truths. He simply stated they wandered the streets, observing the common folk. The prince was merely curious about his subjects' lives. By sunrise, they were safely back within the castle walls. Nothing more, nothing less. King Fiora absorbed the report with a terrifyingly stoic expression. He sensed the mage was withholding the full picture, yet he chose not to pry. Instead, he shifted tactics, asking if Hernando planned to attend the upcoming royal ball. With a jovial grin, the court mage gave a confident yes. The king paused, genuinely surprised. The mage detested formal gatherings, but then again, perhaps the winds of change were blowing. Besides, it has been quite a while since he last unleashed his rhythm on the dance floor. Meanwhile, Yuri returned to the training grounds for his daily duel with the legendary sword demon, Bernard, and as tradition dictated, he ended up face down in the dirt after a brutal lesson. While catching his breath from the latest thrashing, Yuri noticed a commotion nearby. With a sly grin, he began teasing Bernard about his sudden popularity with the castle's ladies. The maids could barely keep their eyes off the stalwart instructor, their cheeks flushing red as they whispered excitedly amongst themselves. Seizing the moment, Yuri tried to goad his stone-faced teacher into attending the ball, urging him to finally give the ladies what they craved. But Bernard simply scoffed, retorting that he had absolutely no interest in such frivolous social gatherings. However, Yuri's inherited sword technique was a different story. It had been plaguing Bernard's mind ever since he witnessed it. Unfortunately, the third prince was correct. No matter how hard Bernard analyzed the moves, the technique lacked a decisive form. He was trying to solve a puzzle with only half the pieces. To Yuri, the soul severance technique came as naturally as breathing. He moved with the current, flowing without rhyme, reason, or rigid structure, or there was simply nothing else like it in the world. A mana cultivation method directly fused with sword arts. It was an existence that defied common sense. Yet, Bernard refused to surrender to ignorance. Perhaps seeing the third prince in a life-or-death battle would finally provide the enlightenment he sought. As for their daily regimen, Bernard was secretly impressed. Yuri's progression, whether in pure swordsmanship or mana manipulation, was nothing short of terrifying. To be honest, the kid's growth was monstrous. But in reality, this wasn't growth at all. It was restoration. The prince was meticulously erasing the traces of the bull method, a technique he had mastered to perfection in his previous life. With stern concern in his eyes, the sword demon warned his disciple never to rush. He feared Yuri was evolving too fast, faster than his developing body could handle. He had achieved miracles at a young age, but at this breakneck pace, his foundation might crumble. With a confident smirk, Yuri assured the old sword nerd that he knew exactly how to maintain his balance. He knew his own limits better than anyone. In fact, he felt fresh enough for another round right this second. To raise the stakes, Yuri tossed his wooden practice sword aside. He unsheathed the ancestor's blade and, with a cocky grin, challenged Bernard to draw real steel. The sword demon honored the warrior's request, elegantly drawing his own blade. To add a layer of spice, Yuri proposed a dangerous wager. If he could successfully land a single clean hit, Bernard would be forced to attend the upcoming ball. Naturally, the sword nerd rejected such a ridiculous bet. He was certain of his victory regardless. Furthermore, he had zero faith that Yuri, a boy with no track record of honesty, would actually honor the deal. Irritated that his master was dismissing him so easily, the third prince flooded his blade with mana, the air humming with power. He launched forward like a speeding bullet, hunting for the slightest opening. Steel clashed against steel as master and student fought with exhilarated smiles on their faces. Spoiler alert, the third prince lost. He still had a mountain to climb before reaching the summit. A few days later, the thunderous sound of galloping hooves echoed from every corner of the kingdom. The day of the grand ball had finally arrived. In a luxurious carriage, a tall blonde man in gleaming armor peered out the window. The Empire's second prince, Gayogana Grandon, was about to make his entrance. Sitting opposite him was none other than the little princess, Yekaterina Ivana Grandchion. It had been an eternity since she last left the Empire's borders. Tonight, her heart beat for one reason only. There was someone she desperately wanted to meet. Meanwhile, a few hours before the festivities, the third prince finally traded his comfortable training gear for royal attire that screamed grandeur. Truthfully, he wanted to burn these fancy clothes. The decorations were far too flashy for his rugged warrior tastes. Ina argued back, claiming he used to adore extravagant outfits. After buttoning him up and smoothing out the fabric, she turned to leave. But before she could escape, the third prince extended a hand, inviting her to dance. He claimed he needed a practice partner and had no one else to ask. Ina stammered, clearly flustered by the young master's sudden request. She suspected this was a prank. Surely the boy planned to stomp on her feet just to watch her fall. But he smoothly took her hand, pulling Ina closer while promising on his honor no tricks, no funny business. Tonight, they were just partners swaying to their own silent rhythm. He took the lead, and she followed his guidance. Ina felt her maiden heart skip a beat, rendered speechless as the dashing young master spun her with unexpected gentleness. Once her nerves settled, Ina playfully bragged that she was actually quite the dancer. Yuri smirked, asking who exactly she had been dancing with. Ina puffed out her chest, boasting of her popularity, though she admitted she had never danced with a partner quite so short. No worries. That height difference wouldn't be a problem for much longer. For a few fleeting minutes, they danced freely under the moonlight, though Ina did crush his toes a few times. Meanwhile, inside the opulent ballroom, melodies filled the air as nobles and their partners swept across the floor, eager to display their elegance to the world. High above the revelry, King Fior sits upon his throne, nursing a goblet of wine as he observes the festivities with a ruler's gaze. Beside a lavish spread of delicacies, the three princes share laughter and conversation. Yet, amidst the banter, Yuri remains vigilant, his sharp eyes carefully scanning every corner of the grand hall. His gaze lands on Count Sidor among the crowd. The man's presence stands out starkly, possessing an aura that separates him from the rank and file of ordinary knights. Surprisingly, he did not send Baron Arancha as a proxy tonight. Yuri's eyes shift, darting toward the thick lenses of his eldest brother's glasses. He asks the crown prince if his eyesight has deteriorated further, but his big brother offers a reassuring smile, insisting it is nothing to worry about. Suddenly, the blare of trumpets cuts through the air, signaling the arrival of distinguished guests. The sea of nobles parts as the second prince of the empire strides in, flanked by his elite entourage. Prince Georg marches straight to the throne to pay his respects. King Fior shakes the blonde royal's hand, offering polite gratitude for the long journey. Pleasantries are exchanged before Georg finally steps aside to introduce his younger sister to the court. When Yekaterina comes into view, a wave of nausea crashes into Yuri's stomach. In stark contrast to his grim expression, the little princess radiates angelic grace as she offers her greetings. Who could imagine that this innocent, angelic girl would become the catalyst for the entire kingdom's destruction? Even now, sweet memories of their shared past linger in Yuri's mind. Yet, he also knows the inevitable blood-soaked ending that awaits them. That written apology, delivered by a carrier pigeon, still haunts his nightmares to this day. In this life, he swears to never form a bond, nor even interact with this girl. He cannot afford to repeat the same fatal mistake. Never again. However, his silent brooding on the sidelines inadvertently catches the princess's attention. While the other princes of the kingdom shower her with compliments and pleasantries, she responds only with curt, polite smiles. The night wears on. Wherever the princess moves, Yuri ensures he stays well outside her perimeter. On the dance floor, he spots his eldest brother swaying with a noblewoman. As expected of Cedric, his movements are the definition of grace and respect. In that brother of his, Yuri sees every quality required of a benevolent, perfect lord. Compared to that man, Yuri feels like an uncultured swine. He cannot even smoothly avoid the Empire's princess for a single evening. Thankfully, his second brother is there to keep the young lady occupied. Even though Yuri carries the heavy burden of a future that has not yet come to pass, the lingering feelings remain. Fortunately, Ina is there to lift his spirits. With her delicious cookies and a warm smile, he asks if serving guests at such a grand event is tiring her out. She jokingly replies that this event is nothing compared to the exhausting task of attending to a certain someone. After clearing the entire tray of cookies, Yuri's mood brightens significantly. He leans against the table, praying for this night of stiff, noble formalities to end. His thoughts are shattered as the Empire's second prince approaches, fixing him with an apprehensive, predatory gaze. In his past life, Georg Grand became a legend. He was the commander who led troops on the battlefield in place of his king. Yuri's royal etiquette training kicks in instantly. He offers a polite bow, formally introducing himself as the third prince to the very man who once drove the kingdom of Briel to ruin. It takes every ounce of his willpower to remain calm and suppress the raging bloodlust he feels toward this man. Unfortunately for Yuri, Georg seems to have taken a special interest in him. With a cunning grin, the second prince suddenly unleashes a sharp, oppressive aura that wraps around Yuri's throat. It feels as though multiple coiling blades are dancing against his skin, probing his vital points. The second prince grimly asks if he truly turned 13 this year, eyeing him with deep suspicion, as if sensing a monster hiding in a child's skin. Without waiting for an answer, Georg walks away, having gathered enough information to discern that King Fior's third son is a frighteningly talented young man. Yuri clenches his fist in silent frustration. That man just openly threatened him with such an intrusive test of power. He can feel how overwhelmingly strong and dangerous Georg is, and terrifyingly, the man hasn't even reached his prime yet. The spawns of the Empire are truly a wretched bunch of bastards. Suddenly, the sharp sound of shattering glass cuts through the hall, drawing everyone's attention. Ina has accidentally spilled wine on Georg's cape, a grave disrespect toward a symbol of the Empire. Instead of looking upset, a twisted, mischievous glint flashes in the second prince's eyes. Yuri watches the scene unfold, feeling his blood run cold. Without hesitation, Georg reaches to draw the sword from his sheath. He lightly places the cold steel against Ina's neck, standing over her like an executioner thirsting for blood. He cites that according to imperial law, such a grave insult is punishable by death. Yuri is the only one who noticed that the prince tripped Ina on purpose. A maid made a simple mistake, yet the second prince demands her head in the name of his twisted justice. Mercifully, the king steps in to reprimand Prince Georg for disrupting the royal ball. King Fior asserts that if it is blood he desires, he should go spill some in his own land. Georg sensed the crushing weight of the king's words. He withdrew his blade, bowed low, and offered a polite apology. He respectfully outlined the fragile peace between the kingdom and Bull. Then, with the cunning of a viper, he dropped a heavy name, Gaetensha. Gaetensha was an imperial knight, mercilessly slaughtered by Fior on Empire soil. The emperor had respected the king's honor then, asking for neither retribution nor gold. Now, Prince Georg drew a chilling parallel. He insisted that taking this maid's head was the only way to preserve the peace and honor of both nations. It was a trap, a silent, deadly challenge to King Fior's authority. With a single sentence, Georg backed the king into a corner. If the prince was stopped from exacting his twisted justice now, it would be an act of war. Yuri weighed his options in the suffocating silence. Logic, power, and reality meant nothing against the core philosophy of Bull. A warrior of Bull must never forsake honor. Even in death, that code was absolute. The oath of Bull stood above the heavens themselves. Georg raised his weapon, ready to sever Ina's head from her shoulders, but suddenly, Yuri's voice boomed through the hall. He strode calmly to the center of the room and claimed ownership of the maid. As she was his employee, her sins were now his to bear. As a fellow prince of royal blood, he demanded Georg reconsider this brutal punishment. Internally, Yuri felt the weight of karma. He was being punished for his criminal past, but no matter the hand fate dealt him, he had to play the game. He never had a choice. Instead of a slaughter in the middle of a ballroom, he proposed a duel of judgment. Hearing the boy's audacious request, the second prince of the empire could barely suppress his amused laughter. Make no mistake, Yuri's name was now burned into his memory. The nobles held their breath as the two princes locked eyes. Georg turned to the king, signaling his intent to accept this ridiculous challenge. King Fior reluctantly agreed to the compromise, knowing full well he was throwing his son to the wolves. However, Prince Georg saved face. Citing their vast difference in strength, he insisted on using a proxy for the duel. He would select the youngest warrior from the Empire's royal guard to give the third prince a fighting chance. With the terms set, the second prince saw no reason to linger among the sheep. Once the lunatic was gone, Yuri rushed to Ina's side. She was trembling violently, consumed by terror. After all, she had been seconds away from a gruesome death. Yuri tried to help her stand, but her legs had turned to jelly. The thought of endangering her master crushed her spirit. Eventually, she had to be carried out by her fellow maids. Yuri walked in the opposite direction and found himself face to face with the princess of the empire. Yakaterina's smile had vanished. In its place was a cold, deadly seriousness. Yuri closed his eyes, dismissing the ghosts of the past, and brushed past her without a word. From afar, Hernando watched the drama unfold, sipping his wine. On the way back to his quarters, Yuri found his eldest brother waiting in the shadows. The crown prince's relaxed mask was gone. With eyes full of worry, he asked his little brother what madness was coming next. Yuri had to explain. He could not stand by and watch that monster slaughter Ina like cattle in a slaughterhouse. The crown prince sighed, a sad smile touching his lips as he ruffled the boy's hair. It had been so long since Yuri felt such genuine brotherly concern. Before leaving, Cedric asked if his little brother needed help with this looming disaster. Prince Georg acted as if he were being merciful by choosing a proxy near Yuri's level, but Cedric saw through the lie immediately. If Yuri fought a knight of similar strength, a fatal accident could easily be arranged during the match. Cedric wanted to step in and crush the problem himself, but Yuri refused. He started this fire, and he would be the one to extinguish it. Sensing his brother's unshakable confidence, Cedric dropped the subject and chose to trust him. Right now, the royal ball was in chaos. With the Empire's second prince storming out, it was Cedric's duty to salvage the atmosphere. Yuri watched him go with deep admiration. If the kingdom had not fallen, Cedric would have been a legendary ruler in this life. Yuri wanted to see what kind of paradise Briel could become under Cedric's reign. But for that future to exist, the boy had to fight. He had to survive. It didn't take long for Georg to select his champion. Today, a redhead prodigy of the Empire took the stage to face the third prince, while the world watched from their velvet seats. And judging by the excited grin on his face, Hernando wasn't worried about this duel at all. Captain Sand, a veteran who has witnessed countless geniuses rise and fall, narrows his eyes. He can tell instantly this opponent's energy is terrifyingly stable. Judging by those refined movements, the opposing knight is a true master of the blade. This man is the flawless product of the Empire's brutal military education system. But while Captain Sand sweats bullets over Prince Yuri's safety, the court mage beside him is the picture of relaxation, smiling and chuckling to himself. Meanwhile, on the stage, the third prince stretches his arms and yawns widely, acting as if this life-or-death duel is the most boring event in history. According to Hernando's estimation, there is absolutely zero cause for concern. In this realm, the title of Grand Wizard represents a summit of power that is virtually impossible for mortals to reach. Among the endless ranks of mages in the magic towers, this supreme title is granted only to those who have unlocked the legendary origin magic. And among these godlike origin spells, there exists one ultimate power, the ability to peek into the very fabric of the world's destiny, the all-seeing fate, revealing magic. In the entire history of this world, only one mage has succeeded in mastering this overpowered ability, Hernando. His mind drifts back to when he first faced the third prince, back when they were both deep in their degenerate gambling phase. That was the first time Hernando had ever lost money since awakening his origin magic. At first, he tried to dismiss it as a mere fluke. Perhaps it was just a run of terrible luck on his part, but deep down, he knew that should be impossible. His fate-revealing magic allows him to read an opponent's hand and the flow of fortune with a single glance. Yet, when he looks at this brat, he sees nothing. When he pushes his powers to the limit, all he can see is a terrifying illusion, a desolate mountain made of swords. In the center of that steel purgatory stands a boy with raven black hair and eyes burning with arrogance, unmistakably the third prince. Hernando watched in that vision as the young man slaughtered his way through endless hordes of enemies, his body broken and bathed in blood. He swung his sword with relentless fury, never yielding for a second. The nightmare ended with the young knight collapsing in utter despair. Back then, Hernando brushed the vision aside as a glitch in his ability, a mere coincidence, if you will. But from that moment on, he sensed a glitch in the order of the universe. Hernando stayed right beside the prince, watching. He witnessed the kid's erratic behavior and the drastic, impossible changes in his personality. Hernando was convinced his fate-revealing magic could eventually pierce that unbreakable wall, but now, everything finally clicks. He is certain of it now. Prince Yuri is a man with no destiny at all. A variable with no future is about to unleash his skills before the entire arena. Across the stage, the opponent has been swinging his sword in practice, his discipline only driving the impatient third prince to the brink of madness. Finally, the second prince, Georg, calls out to the participants to check their status. Both combatants signal their readiness. Under the intense, scrutinizing gaze of the king, The trial by combat officially commences. For the first few seconds, silence reigns. Both the prince and the knight maintain their distance, hunting for the slightest opening. But the moment the signal drops, Yuri explodes forward with speed that defies logic. The knight freezes in horror. In that split second, a vision of death grips him. He hallucinates a quarter of his upper body being instantly wiped from existence. But like a true battle-hardened warrior, the knight powers through the mental shock and raises his blade for a desperate defense. Steel crashes against steel. They exchange blows milliseconds apart, their figures blurring as they hop across the battlefield. Yuri's blade is a living thing, shifting fluidly between impenetrable defense and lethal offense, depending on the moment. As the fight rages on, Yuri struggles to suppress a sinister smile. His opponent, who tried to catch him off guard, now sports a long, bloody gash across his cheek. Watching from the VIP stands, King Fiore turns to his trusted court mage with a burning question. With the heavy concern of a father, he asks Hernando for a prediction on the outcome of this deadly blade dance. In all honesty, the all-seeing mage cannot see the result at all, but instead of fear, a thrill of excitement shivers through his spine. The king recalls the day the young magician arrived in Bull, claiming it was the guidance of the heavens that led him here. When the king asks if the time has come for him to leave, Hernando answers with a decisive no, causing Fiore to sigh in relief. It is a blessing that such a valuable asset remains by my side. Hernando responds humbly, though the king warns that excessive modesty can invite misfortune. Shifting the topic back to the violence below, Hernando turns the tables. He asks the strongest swordsman in the world for his expert perspective, who is truly the superior fighter on that stage. Without a shadow of a doubt, King Fiore bestows that title upon the Empire's prodigious young knight. Logically and realistically, the king is correct. But Hernando is finally starting to understand the true reason the heavenly signs pointed him to this kingdom. The heavens were never guiding him to the king. They were steering him toward a man capable of shifting the fate of the entire world. At first, he assumed he was being drawn to the strongest swordsman, King Fiore himself. Truth be told, the long years of peace had bored him. He was ready to pack up, leave, and never look back until now. With such a fascinating anomaly blooming before his eyes, how could Hernando possibly leave? To miss this spectacle would be a crime against magic itself. When the desperate knight launched a reckless charge, Yuri's gaze sharpened. He flooded his ancestral blade with a terrifying surge of mana. Playtime was over. No more testing the waters. It was time to end this farce with a single, decisive strike. The knight froze. He didn't just see the prince's speed increase, he felt the atmospheric pressure drop around him. Liquid death. The blade flowed like water, dancing past defenses before locking onto the enemy's exposed throat. Mana scorched his skin while the steel froze his soul. The young knight squeezed his eyes shut, accepting his inevitable execution. The viewing deck fell silent. The Imperial Royals stared, utterly thunderstruck by this display of dominance. Fiore's eyes tracked every micro-movement, but even Captain Sand stood slack-jawed. The reversal was simply too clean, too perfect. As for Hernando, a knowing smile tugged at his lips. At the final fraction of a second, the boy had twisted his wrist. Inches from a bloodbath, the blade halted. He had stopped the onslaught with godlike precision. The knight stammered his surrender, and the arena exploded. Deafening cheers for the prince shook the very foundations of the viewing deck. Hernando had spent a lifetime chasing signs from the heavens, yet here stood a boy who dared to defy the guiding light itself. Life became death, and death returned to life. The mage's prophecy had shattered. The boy had rewritten the script. Every step he took rebelled against the cosmos. Yuri Briel had become a singularity, the only life form unbound by the chains of set destiny. Hernando trembled with excitement. He could not wait to see how this chaotic variable would shake the world to its core, a transcender of fate reshaping the globe. The mere thought filled the mage with a thrill unlike anything he had ever known. Just like that, 5 years of peace drifted by in Briolis, but today, chaos returns in the form of a panicked new maid zooming through the halls. It is her very first day on the job, and catastrophe has already struck. She is completely lost in the wrong sector. She prayed to slip away unseen, but luck was not on her side. A voice like gravel halted her. Dark eyes, pitch black hair, a predator blocking her path. The man loomed over her, demanding to know why a servant dared to roam these empty halls with such suspicious intent. The newbie trembled, trying desperately to calm her racing heart and recall her senior's training. His glare bored a hole through her skull. He lacked the stoic grace of the king, so that ruled out the monarch. The crown prince was known for his gentle smile, but this man's sinister eyes, crooked posture, this had to be one of the remaining princes. Terrified of offending a royal boss on day one, the maid stammered out a pathetic plea for forgiveness. But the man only roared louder. He demanded to know if she lacked the manual instructing servants to avoid his presence at all costs. His patience evaporated. The prince raised a hand, ready to teach this ignorant girl a painful lesson in hierarchy. But before the blow could land, a lazy voice cut through the tension. Someone told the brother to quit the creepy act. During her orientation, the head maids had warned her. There was one specific figure in this stronghold she needed to watch for. If she ever saw a handsome young man with a confident smirk and a sword at his hip, she must bow with absolute reverence to the third prince. After forcefully prying his aggressive brother away from the trembling girl, Yuri stepped between them. Crisis averted, Yuri casually continued his stroll through the courtyard, tossing a snack into his mouth like nothing happened. It was a bribe from the maid he just saved. A decadent bag of sweets. Honestly, quite delicious. He wiped the sugar from his lips and centered his mind. He had finally reached the unarmed realm, a state where the sword and body became one. Reaching this peak after years of blood, sweat, and tears was no small feat. It has been half a decade since Luron's undead blade pierced his heart, sending him back in time to his 13-year-old self. Now, he is 18. The era of peace is crumbling. The real storm is about to begin. Speaking of storms, the kingdom's fossils were likely yapping away in the war room right now. Yuri headed straight for the conference hall. He knocked. He shouted. Silence. Yet, through the heavy timber, he could hear the muffled sounds of a heated argument. The guard at the entrance offered a nervous suggestion. Maybe the third prince should try knocking politely one more time. Yuri was done wasting time. He channeled his newfound mana into his fist and blasted the door off its hinges. Dust settled to reveal the kingdom's high nobles, trembling in confusion as the third prince casually apologized for the explosive entry. I've been knocking for a solid minute. He shrugged. Nobody answered. Like a reasonable man, he simply applied a little more force. Yuri turned his gaze to his father at the head of the table and demanded a seat. Once seated, the tension returned. The council resumed their debate on the most critical agenda of the day. A young count slammed his hand down, declaring they had 0 troops to spare for their allies. The kingdom stood alone. If the cowardly nobility intends to ignore the empire's desperate plea, then the burden of survival falls solely upon our shoulders. Yuri understood the tension in the room perfectly. Every faction held its ground, paralyzed by self-interest. It wasn't about loyalty or honor. It was a cold calculation of gains and losses, a filthy game of coin. But if his memories serve him right, this coalition of allied forces is walking straight into a massacre. The nightmare is about to begin. The Empire had issued a decree, summoning every neighboring power to unite under the banner of the so-called allied forces. They begged for troops to counter a massive orc raid in the east. But Yuri has seen the future. He knows this operation ends in absolute, catastrophic failure. In that original timeline, the orcs didn't just win, they rampaged. The human army was crushed, and the borders were drowned in blood and fire. The terrifying anomaly was that the orc horde seemed to completely bypass the Empire itself. Only when the dust settled did the world realize the truth. The letter, the raid, the slaughter. It was all a perfectly orchestrated setup from the very beginning. In the process, the kingdom of Briel lost its finest sons. Outstanding knights and heroes, including the legendary Sir Lean Feandra, were wiped from history. But this time, Yuri is in the room. He refuses to let history repeat itself. The council was split, debating whether to send troops or hoard their strength. Before the pathetic bickering about preserving their numbers could escalate, Yuri stepped forward. He silenced the room by volunteering to march to the front lines himself. He will join the allied forces personally, a royal presence to demonstrate their absolute sincerity to the world. As for these scheming old politicians, all he demands is that they do their duty and stop bringing shame upon the family name of Bull. Hearing his son speak with such unshakable candor and honor, a faint smirk tugged at the king's lips. The boy didn't just offer a solution, he delivered a masterclass in leadership that checked every single box the king desired. Later that afternoon, Yuri retreated to his sanctuary, the training grounds, to cross blades with his mentor, Bernard. Suddenly, the peace was shattered. His rude older brother, the second prince, came charging into the arena, demanding to know if the rumors were true. The arrogant brute couldn't wrap his head around it. Why would Yuri risk his life when he was an untouchable royal, safe within the palace walls. Yuri's reply was sharp as steel. What he is doing is the very definition of a royal's duty. The second prince let out a dramatic sigh, claiming to finally understand his little brother's noble mindset. With a mischievous twinkle in his eye, he promised to guard the palace while Yuri was away. Then, the fool scampered off with his unnatural, awkward gait. Honestly, Yuri would be relieved if that idiot simply managed not to burn the kingdom down, let alone protect it. With the distraction gone, the third prince turned to his longtime instructor. He asked Bernard if the prospect of war worried him. The sword demon scoffed. As long as the kid doesn't do anything suicidal, he reckons Yuri will return in one piece. Coming from the overly critical old man, that was high praise, practically a guarantee of survival. Still, Bernard's expression darkened. He urged the prince to remain vigilant. In his days as the sword demon, he learned just how treacherous orcs can be. Do not underestimate them. Those beasts are far stronger, faster, and more despicable than any nightmare you can conjure. He warned Yuri specifically to watch for orcs carrying tattered flags on their backs. Those monsters are on a completely different level. They are the Orcus, a rare, ferocious breed of calamitous power. But Yuri simply smiled, assuring his master that he had everything under control. After all, he has a few tricks up his sleeve. Just then, Ina burst into the training hall, gasping for air. She brought urgent news. Yuri's guest had arrived, carrying the special order he requested. The key to his plan for the upcoming doomed raid, and it was a very special key indeed. Ina guided him to the office, where the guest was already waiting with a cup of tea. When the third prince entered, Guillermo, the vice president of the Ella Merchant Guild, immediately stood up, bowing with deep reverence. Yuri had expected to meet Elaine today, but the madam was currently navigating a trade route personally, forcing her vice president to step in. Even with the guild's massive success over the past 5 years, she still insists on handling the dangerous product runs herself. She claims it is what she does best, a true merchant to the bone. But Guillermo did not come empty-handed. He had successfully procured and delivered Yuri's requested artifact. The third prince opened the ornate box with anticipation. There, resting on the velvet, was the legendary 4-piece dagger set Elementarian. Guillermo wiped sweat from his brow. He had jumped through rings of fire to acquire this set, never expecting such a decorative item to command such an exorbitant price. But Yuri knew the truth. These were not mere decorations. They were ancient artifacts, imbued with magic from a forgotten era. Yuri channeled his energy, mana flared to life, dancing around the blades. Guillermo nearly collapsed in terror as Yuri slowly pointed a glowing tip toward the merchant's face. Silence filled the room. When Yuri finally withdrew the blade, Guillermo let out a trembling breath. The prince's control over mana was simply godlike. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. A dark figure slipped into the room quick, silent, and lethal. Yuri caught the movement in his peripheral vision, though the merchant remained oblivious. Sensing the danger, Yuri immediately dismissed the businessman. The real work was about to begin. Within a few days, he demanded a complete dossier. He needed to know exactly how the Empire planned to execute their raid. Once Guillermo finally vacated the room, Yuri collapsed onto the couch. With a weary sigh, he commanded the presence lurking in the darkness to reveal itself, like smoke. Asana materialized behind him, draped in her assassin's attire. But pleasantries could wait. Yuri needed to know if the problem with Goro had been permanently resolved. Just as her master commanded, Asana had delivered a message to that loan shark, a warning he would not soon forget. Under the cover of night, she ensured that bastard knew his place. Yuri refused to stand idle while that filth tried to siphon away Elaine's funds. Yet, on her way to report, whispers had reached Asana's ears. The servants were buzzing with news that her lord intended to join the Union army. Her voice carried a rare trace of worry. She urged him to tread carefully on the battlefield. She spoke as if he were marching into the jaws of death alone. But that wasn't the plan. Asana would be right there, shadowing him on this journey. When Yuri teased if she could keep up with the pace of war, Asana's stoic mask cracked, her lips curved into a breathtaking smile. Compared to the hell she crawled out of, the battlefield was paradise. She vowed to remain by her master's side, even if the world burned around them. Days later, the drums of war began to beat. Before the departure, Crown Prince Cedric found his younger brother making final adjustments to his gleaming black armor. His eyes were heavy with concern. All he asked was for Yuri to survive the chaos that awaited him. The third prince laughed off the worry, projecting an aura of invincibility. He vowed to use the front lines as a stage to elevate the glory of House Bull. In return, Yuri scolded his brother about his failing eyesight. Cedric had been burying himself in books, sacrificing his health for the kingdom. Before they parted ways, Cedric pulled his little brother into a crushing embrace. He prayed to the gods that this would not be their final farewell. Yuri swore he would return. Suddenly, the war trumpets shattered the moment, demanding the attention of every soldier in the capital. High atop the platform, King Fior stood before his people. His presence alone signaled the commencement of the grand ceremony. The commander of the expedition ascended the velvet stairs with regal confidence, clad in pristine armor. The third prince looked nothing short of magnificent. Dropping the royal facade, Fior spoke as a father. He asked quietly if fear was gripping his son's heart. He commanded the young prince to turn around, to gaze upon the sea of men who would follow him into the jaws of war. Thousands of Bull soldiers stood in formation. Each one was a living soul, a weight that Yuri now had to carry on his shoulders. History dictated that many would not return, but Yuri clenched his fists. He refused to let them suffer the pitiful deaths he had witnessed in his past life. For the last time, the king tested his resolve. Was he truly ready to bear the burden of their lives? Before Yuri could answer, King Fior stepped down from the podium. Instantly, the air in the square grew heavy, suffocatingly hostile. Yuri locked eyes with his father. A wave of vicious, unfiltered, murderous intent crashed over him. His instincts screamed. His body trembled, rooted to the spot by the sheer pressure. This wasn't just a test. The entity approaching him craved blood. It was the very avatar of death itself. As the king raised his blade, Yuri realized the truth. Evasion was impossible. Fleeing meant a gruesome end. But the third prince was no amateur. He had forged his body and mind in the fires of discipline for this exact moment. Channeling the ancestral mana method, he ignited his core to shatter the paralysis of fear. With steady hands, he drew his blade and settled into a perfect defensive stance. He wouldn't just wait to be struck. Seizing the initiative, he unleashed the soul-severing slash to meet death head-on. Steel sang against steel on the platform. Father and son crossed blades, locking in a powerful standstill. A satisfied smile broke across King Fior's face. He praised the strike. That clash of steel would serve as Yuri's official letter of departure. King Fior wasted no time with long-winded speeches. His order was simple: come back alive. With the poise of a seasoned general, Yuri boldly turned to face his legion. These were the men he would lead into the depths of hell. He raised his sword to the heavens, and the soldiers erupted. Chanting his name with burning conviction, he demanded they place their lives and faith in his hands. Banners snapped in the wind, and blades caught the light. The time had come. The soldiers of Briel began their march toward destiny. Far away at the border, news of Yuri's departure reached a dangerous set of ears. Deep in the dungeons, captured orcs screamed, subjects of twisted research. Count Sidor, the kingdom's valiant shield and first line of defense, stood in the shadows. He was eager to reunite with the prince after 5 long years. Later, as the army set up camp, Yuri sat deep in thought. Studying the map with hawk-like intensity, he asked Sir Raymond regarding their timeline. How much longer until they reached their target? The knight explained their route through the border town in Gid, pushing forward until they reached the assembly point in Balshad. Suddenly, a voice cut through the air, a voice Yuri knew too well. It was the scumbag who had murdered him in his previous life. Roland, the Margrave's eldest son. The traitor knelt with surprising elegance, introducing himself with the false grace of a perfect knight. A wave of revulsion churned in the prince's stomach, yet suppressing his urge to kill. He acknowledged the snake before him. The blonde knight steps forward with burning intensity, announcing he has a personal confession he must deliver directly to the prince's face. Yuri breaks into a nervous cold sweat, fearing the worst. But Roland suddenly blushes like a schoolgirl seeing her crush, screaming at the top of his lungs about his massive respect for his liege. Ever since that legendary moment he witnessed, when the prince saved a mere servant years ago, Roland has been an absolute fanatic of Yuri's heroic behavior. It takes our stunned protagonist a solid moment to reboot his brain and process this shower of ridiculous compliments. Regaining his composure, Yuri assures the knight he's heard great things about him from his father too. These kind words send Roland into a state of pure, frothing ecstasy. With the fanboy crisis averted, the party finally mobilizes and sets off for their destination. However, Sir Raymond offers a grim warning before they depart. He advises Yuri not to take it personally if the Count of Sidor is unwelcoming, as the man is infamous for his icy demeanor, yet reality defies expectation. Our prince is pleasantly shocked to find a massive, roaring welcome awaiting him at the gates of Sidor Castle. Standing front and center is Margrave Hamey himself, personally welcoming our hero with open arms. The Margrave declares this grand celebration is for Yuri alone, a living legend, and the youngest commander daring enough to fight on the front lines. Suddenly, the Margrave throws a curveball. Question: has the prince ever battled an orc? Our boy proudly puffs his chest and flexes that he certainly has. That is, until the cold realization hits him, he has only ever seen the monsters in textbooks. He recovers with the grace of a true royal, stating he would be honored to learn from Sidor's veteran soldiers who have actually slain the beasts. Impressed by his humility, Sir Hamey offers a special welcome gift. They descend deep underground into a dungeon-like facility, where a guard unlocks a heavy iron gate. Wearing a seriously suspicious grin, Sir Ha signals to our prince that his present awaits inside. Fear is not in his vocabulary. Our boy strolls in with absolute confidence, leading his men into the darkness from the front. Suddenly, the heavy door slams shut behind them. Yuri demands to know what this scheme is, but Sir Hamey smoothly assures him there is nothing to worry about. Torches flare to life in unison, illuminating the path toward a menacing silhouette in the shadows. As Yuri's eyes adjust, he and his knights freeze in disbelief at the creature standing right before their shocked eyes. He wonders aloud if it's an orc inside the cell, but Sir Hamey coldly refers to it only as Prisoner 69. The Margrave explains his brutal methods. He uses the creature as a live test subject to analyze its species, creating perfect tactics for the coming war. Our prince asks if this monstrosity is the gift mentioned earlier, and the old man's eyes glint with madness. Hamey grins, declaring, "There is no gift better than knowledge with war on the horizon." Yuri forces a smile and thanks him. Internally, however, he is reeling. He never expected Hamey would be mad enough to use captured orcs as laboratory rats. Noticing the knight behind him trembling, Yuri turns to Simon and orders him to speak the doubts clearly written on his face. Simon confesses that this is insanity, even if it is just an orc. Using a prisoner of war for experiments feels wrong. The prince validates his feelings, agreeing he isn't wrong. He then turns and commands Sir Hamey to open the reinforced door. The orc emerges, ready to unleash hell. Yuri turns to Simon, ordering him to seize this chance and get real combat experience against the beast. As the massive monster roars and smashes the stone floor, Simon steps forward, quickly dropping into a combat stance. But then, the unthinkable happens. The orc crashes face first onto the ground, leaving Simon watching in utter confusion. Simon lowers his guard, turning to argue that it is outrageous to fight a broken creature that has clearly lost its will to live. But that moment of pity is a fatal mistake. The orc launches a surprise jab, striking Simon in the head with concussive force. Panic erupts among the knights as the orc violently chokes Simon with a bulging bicep, using the human as a meat shield. A voice cries out, begging Yuri to save him, while Sir Hamey dismissively insists the beast is already weakened. The beast begins barking strange, guttural gibberish, tightening its grip on the knight's neck as if it understands the concept of a hostage negotiation. Our hero's caught completely off guard. This monster isn't a mindless beast. It's smart enough to leverage a human life. Sir Hamey sighs and calls for a translator. Instantly, a hooded figure emerges from the shadows, and the Margrave orders them to step up. Yuri looks on in confusion as the hooded figure, named Corey, begins translating the orc's growls into human speech. Corey explains the creature's ultimatum. It will snap the knight's neck if they do not let it leave immediately. As if to underscore the threat, the orc yanks the knight's arm with bone-breaking force, eliciting a blood-curdling scream. Our hero snaps into action, calling Arnaldo forward. The mage wastes no time, charging a spell in his palm. He launches a binding blast that wraps around the orc. Stunning it instantly, Yuri sees the opening and rushes in like a lightning bolt. He rips the knight free from the beast's grip, leaving the orc screaming in fury. Yuri turns to Sir Hamey, demanding to know if this is a special breed. The Margrave confirms the terrifying truth: this is no ordinary monster, but an unusually intelligent variant that defies all expectations. Yuri recounts the capture of the beast, describing a chaotic scene where it snapped knights' bones as if they were fragile twigs. Rage detonates in one soldier, who charges in, screaming for the creature's blood. But the main character commands him to stand down instantly. Yuri clarifies that this isn't about mercy, then coldly gestures to the shadows lurking behind the shackled orc. In the cages beyond, a legion of trapped monsters watches the knights with burning, predatory eyes. They are coiled springs, waiting to tear the humans apart the second a defense falters. Yuri warns them that the true battlefield is hell compared to this. This is merely the tutorial mode. Moments later, the training turns violent as three knights square off against several hulking orcs. A monster swings a blazing torch with savage force, but Arnaldo deflects it effortlessly with a shimmering mana shield. Beside him, another knight drives his blade home, standing triumphant over the fresh corpse of his enemy. Yuri applauds the kill, but the soldiers' faces remain dark and grim. Yuri acknowledges that slaughtering defenseless captives feels wrong, but he insists that without this brutal training, the knights will be nothing but fodder in the real war. Sir Hammy admits this practice violates their knightly code of honor, but his voice turns ice cold as he declares that such filth deserves no mercy regardless. Leading them deeper into the dungeon, he reveals that the orcs above were merely empty shells. The truth, he explains, is that orc camps are factories of unspeakable torture and despair. He stops before a reinforced iron door, warning that the ultimate consequence lies within. As the heavy gates creak open, the knight's eyes widen in absolute horror. Huddled in the darkness are half-orcs, the twisted offspring of war. Yuri remains unmoved, simply noting that their numbers are far higher than his calculations predicted. Sir Hammy explains with a grimace that the beasts capture humans for breeding, creating these tragic abominations. The main character asks the old veteran if he truly hates the orcs. Sir Hammy answers without a second of hesitation. He loathes them with every fiber of his soul and will not rest until their entire race is erased from existence. Observing the man's terrifyingly calm demeanor, Yuri realizes that for Sir Hammy, genocide is his reason for living. It makes sense. The man once found his own son's broken body in an orc village, and that fire of rage has never burned out. The next dawn, Yuri stands on a cliff's edge, watching the sun bleed across the horizon. Sir Hammy approaches, requesting that Yuri take Corey, the translator from yesterday, under his wing. Yuri flashes a calculated smile. He praises the boy's ability to speak the orc tongue, noting that such a skill is a weapon in itself. Corey stammers an explanation, but the main character cuts him off, claiming he already knows everything. He tosses a heavy gauntlet to the stunned half-orc, telling him to stop worrying and prove his worth. The boy tries to refuse such a priceless gift, but Yuri ignores the protest completely, shouting for Raymond to join them. He asks the knight if they are approaching the border. Raymond confirms it, adding that monster hordes are rarely seen in this region. Yuri shakes his head, eyes narrowing as he warns him not to get complacent. The hordes remain a threat, and their mission is total extermination. Meanwhile, miles away, a merchant caravan navigates a silent road. An unnatural chill settles over the travelers. Suddenly, armed riders materialize from the dust, blades already drawn. Their leader strikes without a word, his blade singing a song of death as it carves through the merchants. In seconds, the dirt road turns to mud with fresh blood. The massacre concludes, and the scene shifts back to the prince riding steadily on his steed. Glancing back, Yuri muses that it would be disastrous if anyone discovered Corey's half-orc lineage. But with Arnaldo guarding him, the secret is safe for now. He checks his map and summons Jared. He assigns the knight to scout ahead. Jared immediately pales, terrified of the monsters lurking in the wild. Jared argues that beasts usually scatter when the army approaches, but the prince shuts him down cold, stating they will have to face the darkness eventually. Yuri leans in, mocking Jared's cowardice with a smirk. The knight stays silent, taking jab after humiliating jab from the prince. Finally, Jared snaps and storms off to face his doom, leaving the main character smiling in victory. Sir Raymond rides up, noting the prince seems to give Jared special attention. Yuri shrugs, admitting he simply enjoys tormenting the man. The mood shifts as the prince asks why Raymond joined this bloody war. Raymond's expression hardens. He fights solely for the safety of Briel. It is the only answer he has ever known. Satisfied, the prince commands Raymond to lead the unit. He decides to check on his reluctant scout personally and spurs his horse into a gallop. Shortly after, he uncovers a hidden camp and ambushes a hooded figure patrolling the perimeter. A blade presses against the captive's throat as Yuri warns him that a single sound will be his last. Jared whispers that he found their target, pointing to the bandit encampment ahead. The prince studies the prisoner, finding it suspicious that a leader would send only one man to patrol the outskirts. Trembling in sheer terror, the bandit begs for his life, swearing he is nothing more than a nameless grunt. Suddenly, a flash of crimson catches the prince's eye, a mysterious red stone dangling from the thug's neck. Yuri snatches the necklace with a violent jerk, demanding to know the artifact's origin. The bandit stammers that their leader forces every patrol unit to wear them, blade drawn. The prince presses the steel against his throat, asking what dark spell lies within. But the trembling fool swears he knows nothing, so our hero decides to spare him for now. Spinning around, Yuri declares he will simply drag the truth out of the leader's corpse personally, / hours bleed away until the sun begins to dip below the horizon. Suddenly, Jared breaks the silence, spotting movement in the distance. He reports the troops are positioned and scouts are deployed. / the prince smirks, asking if the knights can clean up the mess once he goes into full barbarian mode. The question freezes Jared in his tracks, completely caught off guard by the reckless plan. But Yuri doesn't wait for an answer, urging him to hurry up if he wants to pad his kill count. Without a second thought, the prince blurs forward, ignoring Jared's desperate shouts to wait. / our hero couldn't care less about safety as he charges headfirst into the enemy line. Inside the camp, the bandits hear the thunderous approach and panic, wondering what calamity is descending upon them. They look up, but their sunlight is blotted out by a terrifying shadow as the prince crashes down from the sky. Paralyzed by fear, they can only watch as our hero greets them with a chillingly innocent smile. / by the time night fully claims the sky, the royal knights finally reach the camp. What they find is a scene of absolute carnage and the prince sitting casually by a fire amidst a sea of corpses. With a mocking grin, he teases them for taking their sweet time to join the party. Panting for breath, Jared scolds him for such suicidal recklessness, but Yuri fires back that the knights were simply too slow to keep up. Shifting gears, he turns his gaze to Raymond and demands a status report. Raymond confirms the stragglers have been purged, and miraculously, not a single knight fell in battle. / in high spirits, the prince orders the men to butcher the supplies and start the feast. He proudly announces tonight's gourmet special mystery meat on a stick. Jared groans that the gamey stench is unbearable, but Yuri just smirks, telling him he lacks the refinement to appreciate a warrior's meal. As they banter about camp logistics, a dead bandit in the background begins to twitch and rise. Raymond interrupts, warning that their march to Gid might lead to a collision with another army, while casually kicking the half-dead bandit back into the dirt. Our hero asks which nation stands in their way. Raymond's expression darkens as he reveals it might be the Holy Kingdom. / Yuri notes the trouble-fighting troops blessed with divine healing magic is a nightmare. Raymond advises diplomacy, suggesting they stay on good terms to secure future medical support. He then drops a crucial detail: the supreme commander of the holy forces is a young princess. Rumors say she's on the verge of losing her succession rights, making her desperate for a military victory to prove her worth. Yuri falls into deep contemplation, and Raymond offers to have the knights gather intel on her situation. But the prince waves him off, deciding there is no need for spies when he can simply confront the girl himself. The city of Gid stands as the vital checkpoint for all allied forces marching toward Balshad. Although intended as a supply hub, it remains isolated, forcing every visitor to bow to local laws. Halting outside the gates, our hero orders Raymond to keep the men on their best behavior. / the scene shifts to the Lord of Gid, who welcomes the prince with open arms. Hands are shaken, and Yuri expresses his humble gratitude for the city's support in this war. The Lord laughs heartily, recalling how the legendary Fior Bull once terrorized orcs in his youth. / Yuri bows, promising to honor that terrifying legacy. Suddenly, a butler rushes in, whispering urgent news into the old lord's ear. The lord announces the holy princess has arrived early and asks if Yuri is willing to meet her immediately. Yuri agrees, and moments later, the holy princess marches in, clad in radiant armor and flanked by elite guards. She introduces herself with cold formality, and the lord replies that her presence is a supreme honor. But as her gaze lands on Yuri, her eyes narrow with disdain, bluntly asking if he is merely the lord's servant. The insult hits like a slap in the face, / before anyone can breathe, she dismisses him, ordering him to leave so the important people can talk. The lord panics, trying to correct the misunderstanding, but her knight loses his temper and begins screaming at Yuri to get out. Our hero, clearly entertained by their ignorance, finally introduces himself as the third prince of Bri. The revelation hits the room like a thunderclap, freezing everyone in absolute shock. The silence is deafening until the knight stammers an apology, but Yuri cuts him off with a dramatic flair, claiming it's his own fault for not dressing like a royal. The princess buried her face in her palms, utterly humiliated. Behind her, the royal knights bowed their heads in shame, desperate for forgiveness. Even as the tea was poured, Yuri didn't let up. He leaned in with a mischievous grin, teasing, "So, tell me honestly, does this outfit really make me look that cheap?" She tried to maintain her composure, quietly whispering a plea for him to stop. But Yuri, he was savoring every second of her embarrassment. Finally showing some grace, he straightened his posture for a formal introduction. He extended a hand, which the princess shook with noticeable reluctance. "How old are you?" he asked casually. When she replied that she was 20, a sly smirk curled his lips. "Only 18 here," he revealed. "Since you're older, I guess I can drop the formalities and speak casually now. The Lord beamed at the interaction, oblivious to the tension. It warms my heart to see our forces bonding before the hunt begins. Princess Sevilla could only nod, forcing an awkward agreement through gritted teeth. Yuri's gaze sharpened. He pressed her regarding the missing battalions. They will arrive one day behind us, she explained defensively. He voiced concern for their safety, but the princess snapped back. My troops are elite and disciplined, she insisted. What exactly are you implying? Atin. Orcs don't fight fair, Yuri stated coldly. They specialize in traps and ambushes. The Lord immediately nodded, backing up the prince's tactical assessment. Yuri waved his hand dismissively. But surely, that's no issue for the Holy Kingdom's finest. His tone dropped. Just keep my warning in mind, Sevilla. Sometime later, the mage Hernando walked beside our hero. What is your assessment of the Holy Knights, my liege? Rigid, old-fashioned, Yuri scoffed. If they don't adapt, that princess is walking straight into a disaster. Still, he admitted, she has potential. His expression shifted to business. Are you certain that necklace originated from this region? The mage nodded vigorously. This is the only market capable of such sales. Yuri's mind raced. The red stones weren't jewelry. They were bait designed to drive orcs into a bloodthirsty frenzy. Could it be a magical artifact? Yuri mused aloud. Hernando agreed with the possibility, though he noted the item appeared far too feeble to hold such power. Leaving the irritated shopkeeper behind, Hernando muttered that the entire stock had been bought out by a mystery buyer. Yuri looked unimpressed, until Hernando suddenly pointed forward in excitement. Look, the knights are gambling at the tavern, Hernando blurted. A dangerous smirk formed on the prince's face. Oh, I simply cannot let that slide. A true military force must set a shining example, he declared self-righteously. Hernando nodded eagerly, swallowing every word of the act. Meanwhile, in another corner of the city, a holy knight approached Sevilla. Did the meeting with the Lord go smoothly, Your Highness? The vice-captain cut in before she could answer. I've heard rumors, he sneered, that Prince of Bol is not to be trusted. He spat insults at Yuri and mocked the kingdom of Bol itself. Sevilla's eyes flashed. Watch your tongue, vice-captain, she warned sharply. The man ignored her command, continuing his tirade about the prince's lack of manners and his atrocious fashion sense. His arrogance peaked as he declared, That boy will die in this war. That crossed the line. Shut your mouth, the princess commanded. Fennec, the vice-captain, finally clamped his mouth shut, realizing he had pushed too far. Sevilla shifted the topic, demanding a status report on their forces. Fennec waved it off with unearned confidence. Relax, princess. Leave everything to me. He excused himself with a bow, announcing that he was heading out for a patrol of the city. Once he was gone, Sevilla let out a heavy sigh of relief. Sometime later, Fennec swaggered into a tavern packed with noisy patrons. Scanning the chaotic room, he narrowed his eyes. Who does this trash belong to? When told they were Bol's men, a look of pure disgust twisted his face. Watching them gamble, he scoffed. Zero discipline, ignoring all order and rules. Typical. One of the card players fired back instantly. Better than Briel's knights, you lot are useless trash, just like your leader. Fennec's vein popped. He couldn't let such insolence slide. I've heard enough, he roared. He stormed forward, demanding to know what they thought they were doing. Do you think this alliance is a joke? He screamed, ranting about their disgraceful lack of honor. Suddenly, a calm voice cut through his rage. A hand landed on his shoulder. And what might your name be? Our hero asked. Instead of answering, Fennec started nagging the newcomer. Your pathetic behavior is going to rot the discipline of the soldiers. He taunted Yuri, sneering. We need warriors who can fight, not useless brats playing cards. To top it off, he smirked smugly. I bet you've never even held a sword. My expectations for you are non-existent. The prince ignored the insults entirely. You never answered my question, he said coldly. Are there no rules of conduct in the Holy Kingdom? That single sentence sent a chill down the vice-captain's spine. Panic set in just as Captain Sevilla herself stepped into the pub. Her eyes blazed. Vice-Captain Fennec, why are you here when you should be on patrol? He fumbled out a pathetic apology, but she pointed to the door. Get out. Do your duty. Now. After shooting a hateful glare at the captain, Fennec retreated. Sevilla turned to apologize, but Yuri shrugged. It's fine. It is difficult to control every single dog in the pack, and she looked at him with renewed respect. I promise, I will properly repay you for this next time. One look at her stiff posture, and the prince immediately realizes the weight of the situation Raymond had warned him about. But this isn't his war to fight. Muttering that he shouldn't get entangled in her mess, he coolly turns his attention back to the cards in his hand. Meanwhile, in the cold night air outside, the vice captain confronts her, his voice dripping with suspicion as he asks if she is truly allies with the Prince of Briel. Her eyes flash cold. She silences his insolence with a single glare, asking if he dares to question her judgment. The vice captain flinches, realizing he has overstepped his bounds, but their tension is shattered by the frantic footsteps of a soldier rushing toward them out of the darkness. The messenger collapses to his knees, begging forgiveness for the interruption, but his breath comes in ragged gasps. He bears a critical report from the main force. The captain demands a report, and the soldiers' words strike like a hammer. Their main battalion is being slaughtered by a massive orc offensive. The lord of the city steps forward, his face pale, asking if she truly intends to march into that hellscape in the dead of night. Desperate to minimize casualties, he implores her to swallow her pride and requests reinforcements from the Briel army nearby. But arrogance blinds the vice captain. He cuts the lord off, sneering that the glorious Holy Kingdom does not need handouts to crush a few filthy orcs. The lord stammers that he meant no offense, but the tension in the air is thick enough to choke on. The captain intervenes, her voice calm but firm. She assures the lord that while she appreciates his concern, her knights are more than capable of handling this threat alone. Wasting no time, the Holy Kingdom's forces mobilize with terrifying speed, vanishing into the shadows to rescue their besieged comrades. Watching them leave, the lord whispers a grim order to his subordinate and inform the Briel army immediately. The Holy Knights are walking into a massacre, and time is running out. Back at the Briel encampment, the prince receives the urgent missive. His expression remains unreadable as he informs Raymond that the city lord is begging them to save the Holy Kingdom's troops from the orc onslaught. The prince scoffs, stating they should absolutely refuse. Without an official request from the Holy Kingdom itself, this is a political minefield. He sees right through it. The vice captain's foolish pride is blocking the call for help. With a smirk, he tells Raymond to ready the men for war. He turns to Roy, ordering him to drag the rest of the soldiers out of the tavern. Roy doesn't hesitate, launching himself toward the bustling market with the speed of a fired arrow. With preparations complete, the prince grins. He decides to treat this life-or-death battle as a thrilling midnight adventure, marching toward the chaos alongside his troops. He glances at his men, asking if the alcohol is still in their systems. They roar back with savage cheer, their bloodlust already rising. He checks on Jared, noticing the soldier looks pale and sickly, but Jared grits his teeth and swears he is ready for combat. Roland watches the prince with newfound awe. He admits he is stunned. Not only did the prince forgive the Holy Knights' disrespect, but he is now riding to save them. Truly, a leader worth following. Hearing this, Yuri falls into deep thought. She wonders if Roland was always this steadfast, or if the prince's sudden, drastic transformation has sparked a change in everyone around him. Suddenly, a scout's voice cuts through the noise. The Holy Knights are in sight. The prince narrows his eyes. This will be their first true clash with the orc legions. He roars his command, "I will be the first blade to strike and the last to retreat," invoking his title as the third Prince of Briel. He orders every single soul to survive the night. Meanwhile, as the Holy Knights gallop toward the fray, the captain feels a cold knot of regret in her stomach. She realizes her fatal mistake. She underestimated the enemy and failed to predict the ambush. The words of a wise mentor echo in her mind, a haunting reminder that caution is the better part of valor. Gritting her teeth, she tells Fennec there is only one way out. They must decapitate the enemy leadership instantly to end the battle. The vice captain barks orders, aligning the formation for a suicidal charge. Without hesitation, the knights thunder toward the orc lines. The captain begins to chant, weaving a high-tier spell to flood her soldiers' bodies with explosive power. But as they close the distance, the ground beneath them begins to glow with an ominous light, a magic circle. It's a trap. The earth rumbles violently, and the ground shatters beneath their hooves. The Holy Knights, horses and all, plummet into a massive pit. Falling into the darkness, the captain is crushed by guilt. Once again, her decisions have led them into ruin, forcing her to recall her tragic past. Years ago, she was hailed as a prodigy, blessed with holy power since childhood. The praise was intoxicating, and she lived to please the crowd. To meet their crushing expectations, she mastered the sword, even humiliating her own brother in duels to prove her worth. But that victory was the beginning of her nightmare. Her brother, consumed by jealousy, manipulated her into a life of endless warfare. He promised her salvation and glory for the gods, but it was a lie. He only sent her to the slaughter so she would die in battle. leaving the throne open for him alone. Snapping back to reality, she shakes off the dizziness and rises from the dirt, shouting for her knights to stay sharp. But horror strikes when she realizes they are drenched in a thick, dark liquid. She looks up to see orcs lining the rim of the pit, torches blazing in their hands. It started as an ambush, but now it is an execution. As the scent of oil fills the air, the captain realizes they are staring death in the face. Just as the abyss of despair threatens to swallow her whole, a figure descends. Our boy bursts onto the scene, his blade dancing through the air as he slaughters the orcs in a single breath. He commands her to open her eyes, offering a sharp reality check. Is it truly so burdensome to simply ask for salvation when death is knocking? A rope is tossed into the pit, becoming their lifeline. As they scramble to safety, she pledges her debt to him, while the vice captain bows his head in shame, apologizing to the prince for his earlier insolence. The soldier vows that even in this bleak, dead-end existence, the memory of this day will remain etched in his soul forever. The prince accepts the apology with grace. He declares with absolute certainty that the Holy Kingdom will stand as a shield for Bri whenever the call for aid arises. Amidst the aftermath, our boy's sharp gaze catches movement. The orcs are falling back, their mission to eradicate the Holy Knights a complete failure. He doesn't hesitate. With a voice like thunder, he orders the soldiers to pursue. Not a single beast is allowed to escape this battlefield alive. Suddenly, the prince locks eyes with the enemy flag. Orkval is here. He steels himself for battle, while the captain watches on, a storm of silent worry brewing in her heart. The orc commander unleashes a lethal arrow, seeking to end our hero instantly, but with a flash of steel, our boy draws his sword and slices the projectile cleanly in two. He sees the rage boiling in the orc commander's eyes. It is a trap, but one he is more than willing to walk into. He tells the captain he will return shortly, but she grabs his arm in panic. Is he insane? Charging into the enemy ranks alone is a suicide mission no rational mind would attempt. Our boy has no time for explanations. He dashes forward like a bolt of lightning, seeing the threat. An orc pours every ounce of strength into a desperate spear throw. As the steel tip tears through the wind, time seems to slow. His mind drifts back to a memory from 5 years ago. Bernard had spoken of the heart-soul slash. He taught that the battlefield holds infinite variables. Chaos, where a single shift can decide life or death. While one must train for every scenario to survive, his heart-soul slash operates on a different plane of existence. For a fleeting instant, it heightens the senses to the absolute maximum. It grants the user godlike perception, allowing them to read the world instantly and guide their blade with flawless, brutal efficiency. At the time, Yuri was clueless. The philosophy flew right over his head, and he just begged for a simple explanation. Bernard simply laughed, promising he would understand when death was near. In the heat of true combat, the body moves before the mind can even think. Back in reality, instinct takes over. He sidesteps the first spear, launches himself skyward, and contorts his body in midair to evade the second. He lands light as a feather on the spear's shaft, using the enemy's weapon as a springboard to vault even higher into the heavens. Gravity becomes his ally as he dives. His sword becomes a blur of silver light, severing heads before the beasts even realize they are dead. Suddenly, 3 more brutes charge. Even for him, a head-on collision with this much mass is a gamble with death. But the thrill of the battlefield sings in his blood. Instead of fear, a manic excitement begins to rise. As the enemies close in, the heart-soul slash activates. He visualizes the single perfect path to slaughter all 3 in one breath. His blade sings, reducing them to ribbons of flesh. The technique is so divine that his physical body struggles to keep pace with the speed of his mind. Seizing a fallen spear, he roars across the battlefield, demanding the attention of Orkval, the enemy commander. He hurls the weapon with terrifying force. Orkval raises his guard to block, but it is a feint. The spear sails past, striking the enemy flag and bringing it crashing down to the dirt. The insult strikes home. Orkval is consumed by blinding rage. He screams for his troops to fall back. He will crush this insolent human personally. The prince anticipates a swarm, but the orc leader has too much pride to risk more of his kin. The army retreats, leaving only the duel. Our boy smiles. This was all payback for that cowardly arrow shot earlier. As the dust settles, Sela rushes toward our hero, her face pale with worry. She frantically checks him for wounds, but he waves her off with a casual grin. He is untouched. He notes that the chaos has finally ceased. Turning to her, he asks how it feels to taste her first true victory as a member of the Alliance. Tears well up as she thanks him from the depths of her soul. Without his divine intervention, they would all be corpses by now. Far away, Orkval trembles with humiliation. The fires of vengeance burn in his eyes. This is far from over. The scene shifts to a lively inn. Jared stands tall, regaling the room with the epic saga of the prince who charged into hell to save the princess. The soldiers drink in every word, but a cynical knight scoffs. He claims our hero is nothing but a gambling addict and a slob. Ronald slams his mug down. He refuses to let that slander slide, swearing that the prince possesses true royal blood. He vows to reveal the truth to the knights, though the laughing crowd just dismisses him as being drunk out of his mind. In the corner, Asana eats silently, her mind racing. Yuri is too enigmatic to be a mere noble. After all, he saw through her assassin techniques instantly. He arrived on the battlefield with purpose, and he moves as if he holds the script of fate itself in his hands. The assassin beckons the innkeeper. She is on a hunt, looking for a specific target. She describes a man with brown hair and exceptional sword skills, a description so vague it could be half the kingdom. But then she adds the final piece of the puzzle, a bizarre accent. Instantly, a spark of recognition lights up the old man's eyes. The informant clarifies the details. The target did not possess brown hair, yet one trait was unmistakable. He spoke with a heavy, distinct accent. A memory sparks in the innkeeper's mind. That stranger ordered a rice dish, specifically without the rice. Before asking for the route to Balshad, satisfied with the intel, she flicks a gold coin his way with a knowing smirk. The man catches the payment, grinning from ear to ear. He accepts the unexpected reward with gratitude, his greed satisfied for the night. Asa connects the dots instantly. Balshad is the gathering point for the allied forces. This mystery figure walks the same path as our hero, meaning the chase is on. She must intercept him before he vanishes. His identity is no small matter. He is whispered to be one of the 10 supreme fighters in the continent. The legendary swordsman from the east. The perspective shifts back to the protagonist, leaving the city of Gid behind. The party marches forward, their eyes set on the next battlefield. The journey is long and arduous, forcing them to camp under the stars. Yet, having witnessed the brutality of the orcs, they take zero chances. Every defensive precaution is activated. Yuri watches the soldiers work, a smirk touching his lips. He notes that the troops have settled into a perfect rhythm, executing orders without needing a single word of instruction. Raymond steps up, nodding in agreement. He remarks that repetition has bred perfection. Their movements are no longer conscious thoughts, but automatic reflexes honed by survival. With the camp secure, the prince decides to detach from the main group. He informs the knight that he intends to patrol the perimeter alone, seeking a moment of solitude. Stepping beyond the safety of the torchlight, the atmosphere shifts. The silence out here is heavy, almost suffocating. His eyes scan the darkness, senses on high alert. Night is the favored cloak of assassins and ambushers. Suddenly, the silence shatters. Crude shouting and profanity pierce the air, instantly drawing his focus. Moving like a phantom toward the noise, he discovers the source. 2 knights have cornered a lone figure, their posture radiating malice. The 2 scumbags spit insults at Corey, their words cutting deep enough to drive the half-orc to tears. One knight sneers, accusing the translator of being a filthy spy for the monster race. Corey shakes his head frantically, denying the claim with a trembling voice. He stammers that such a betrayal would never even cross his mind. The denial only fuels the knight's rage. He seizes the translator's arm in a vice grip, ripping off a gauntlet. He demands to know where the half-orc stole the armor, ignoring the poor soul's desperate pleas of innocence. Before the bullying can escalate to bloodshed, a commanding presence emerges from the shadows. Our hero decides he has seen enough. Yuri steps into the light, his voice ice cold as he interrogates the knights. He demands an explanation for their behavior, but the trash bags only stammer out pathetic excuses. Yuri silences them with a sharp gesture. He orders them to get a grip on reality and vanish from his sight before he loses his patience completely. Terror washes over the knights as they recognize the prince. They snap to rigid attention, saluting frantically before fleeing into the night like frightened rats. Turning to the victim, our hero asks if he is injured. Corey wipes his eyes, thanking the prince profusely. When asked if he wants the knights punished, the kind-hearted translator shakes his head, offering forgiveness instead of vengeance. He offers a bitter smile, murmuring a harsh truth about the world. Everyone naturally gravitates toward beauty. Therefore, it is only common sense that they would despise someone as hideous as him. His self-worth is dangerously low. He whispers that accepting special treatment would taint his goal. This piques the prince's curiosity. The half-orc reveals his life's ambition is simply to live among people in true peace. Yuri listens in silence, but internally, he is skeptical. In this cruel world, such a dream might be nothing more than a fantasy. He considers that Corey is useful as a translator for now, but once the war ends, society will be less forgiving. With a sigh, our boy pats the half-orc on the head, asking if his studies with Hernando are progressing. He offers a piece of vital advice. The translator must learn magic from the mage. To survive among humans, he needs a skill that makes him undeniable, regardless of his appearance. Later that night, the prince convenes a war council. His eyes sweep the room as he questions their readiness against a potential night raid. Raymond steps forward with a report. The supply points are draped in fireproof blankets, and the guard rotation has been doubled. Their defense is solid. Jared, however, voices his skepticism. He questions if such paranoia is necessary, pointing out that the excessive number of patrols is draining their stamina. Yuri slams a finger onto the map. He explains that this territory belongs to the orcs. In their domain, there are no rules, and anything is fair game. His expression darkens as he predicts the enemy's strategy. There is a high probability the orcs will utilize fire tactics, mirroring their previous assault. There, as if summoned by his words, a guard bursts into the tent, breathless and panicked. The enemy is here. The attack has begun. The commanders rush outside, and the scene is apocalyptic. The entire camp is swarming with orcs, the night sky lit up by raging wildfires. Without warning, a barrel arcs through the air and detonates upon impact. A massive explosion rocks the ground. Yuri is caught off guard, stunned that these beasts are capable of such advanced explosive magic. Amidst the chaos, he shouts to Hernando, asking for a solution. The mage yells back that they must eliminate the bomber squad immediately or the camp is doomed. Our hero barks orders at Jared and Raymond to hold the line and command the units. He will handle the source of this madness personally. He demands the coordinates of the spellcaster. Hernando points a trembling finger straight into the heart of the enemy lines. Yuri does not hesitate. He tells the mage to hold on and launches himself forward, tearing through the battlefield at breakneck speed. He skids to a halt, his eyes widening in recognition. He knows exactly who is orchestrating this ambush. The orc clad in crimson armor turns to face him. It is none other than Orc Val, the same monster our hero utterly humiliated in their last encounter. Closing the distance in a flash, our hero demands to know if Orc Val is the puppet master behind this raid. The monster offers no words, only a menacing glare. Instead of speaking, Orc Val draws his massive weapon and brings it down with cataclysmic force. Yuri barely raises his defense in time to block the strike. The sheer weight of the blow sends the prince sliding back, his boots carving trenches in the earth. Yet, a wild grin spreads across his face. He looks absolutely thrilled. He quickly analyzes his opponent. Orc Val Kyo has evolved. He is not only smarter, but his movements possess the refined technique of a seasoned veteran. Yuri realizes he must maintain distance to survive this rematch. However, the beast grants no quarter. He launches another ferocious strike, but Yuri weaves through the danger with a dancer's grace. Their deadly dance stretches on, tension thick in the air. Finally, the prince catches a heavy blow, his stance unyielding against the crushing weight. A vicious counterswing connects as he floods his blade with mana. Yuri acknowledges the grim truth. This is no grunt. Orc Val is a monster in a league of his own. Blood boiling with anticipation, Yuri decides it is time to test the limits of this beast. With a sudden burst of speed, he launches a frontal assault, but Orc Val is fast. The monster sidesteps the steel and retaliates with a blow powerful enough to shatter bone. Relying on his razor-sharp instincts, the prince rolls to safety just in time. A confident smirk plays on his lips. He enjoys the challenge. Dark mana begins to swirl around the orc, clearly mimicking the mana method. Yuri sighs. After seeing the incantations earlier, he should have predicted this escalation. His mind flashes back to the explosion magic. If a shaman can manipulate energy, then a warrior channeling mana must be one of their supreme elites. Time to end this. The prince instantly triggers his lethal ability, the Soul Reaper. While the monster holds his ground, Yuri unleashes a phantom strike. Out of nowhere, cold steel pierces straight into the orc's throat. Shockingly, Orc Val refuses to fall. The beast clamps his neck muscles down on the blade, trapping the weapon with sheer brute force. Yuri realizes the tactic instantly. The monster focused every drop of his mana into his neck just to prevent decapitation. Roaring insults in his guttural tongue, the orc raises his massive axe high, aiming to split the prince in two. In a split second, Yuri wrenches his sword free. The violent motion slices cleanly through 3 of Orkval's fingers, sending them flying. He twists to evade the desperation strike, but the axe still finds its mark. The blade grazes his shoulder, missing a fatal blow to the head by mere inches. Pain only widens Yuri's grin. He understands now against a juggernaut like this, half-hearted attacks are meaningless. He coats his blade in a dense, shimmering layer of mana, taunting the beast to stop stalling. Both fighters flare their auras, the air trembling between them. In a blinding flash, they collide steel meets steel, triggering a catastrophic explosion of energy that shakes the earth. As the pillar of smoke slowly dissipates, the truth is revealed. Only one weapon remains whole. The orc's axe lies shattered on the ground. The hero stares down with eyes cold as the abyss. Defeated and broken, the massive orc collapses to his knees in submission. Gripping his sword with both hands, the prince declares the execution. The blade descends without mercy, spilling a river of crimson onto the battlefield. Standing over the ruined form of Orkval, Yuri tightens his grip. Incredibly, the powerhouse is still breathing, clinging to life. It makes sense. A monster of this caliber is an elite commander and a treasure trove of tactical information. Wiping the splatter from his face, Yuri mutters that killing such a valuable asset now would be a waste. In the distance, his knights rush forward, shouting his name. They check for injuries, but their eyes widen in shock. The opponent lying at the prince's feet is none other than the dreaded commander, Orkval. Yuri waves off their concern. A knight steps forward, reporting that the threat to the camp has been completely neutralized. He commends their efficiency before issuing a cold command. Gather every surviving orc, immediately starting with this massive heap of trash. Glaring down at the unconscious warlord, Yuri declares his intent. It is time to make these monsters talk. The scene shifts back to the safety of the camp. The adrenaline fades as Yuri finally receives treatment for his battle wounds. When asked about the fight, he claims it was just a lucky hit. The mage scoffs, teasing that it looked more like the prince was being ragdolled across the field. Bandaging the shoulder, Hernando notes the cut is shallow. The prince was fortunate. A deeper strike would have ended the war right there. Yuri attempts to leave, but the mage stops him. Hernando snaps his fingers, ordering the men to bring forward a special preparation. Behold, a royal throne. Hernando insists that if Yuri is going to conduct an interrogation, he must do it with proper authority. The prince raises an eyebrow, caught off guard by the luxury, but the mage is adamant a true commander must carry himself with flair, even in the mud. Suppressing a smile, Yuri agrees. He might as well test the seat rather than let their hard work go to waste. Sinking into the cushions, he admits it isn't bad at all. He clears his throat, his demeanor shifting instantly. The interrogation session has officially begun. The prince issues his command, bring the prisoners before him, one by one. A moment later, brutality takes center stage. A knight forces a screaming orc down, shoving its head straight into the roaring campfire. The screams cut off as the creature perishes, sending a wave of terror through the captives. Yuri speaks coldly. Each of them gets only one chance to answer. He demands the name of the mastermind behind the night raid. In response, the kneeling orc roars back in defiant anger. Corey offers to translate, but Yuri waves him off. He doesn't need a linguist to know when he is being cursed at. Without a second thought, the prince signals Jared. The knight steps forward, delivering the same fiery judgment to the insolent prisoner. The other monsters watch in paralyzed horror as their comrade burns. As the body goes limp, Yuri summons mana blades, letting them hover menacingly in the air. His voice drops to a freezing whisper. He will ask one simple question. Their answer determines if their journey to hell is swift or excruciating. To prove his point, he drives a blade into the charred corpse. With a dismissive wave, he orders Jared to dispose of the trash and bring the next victim. The silence breaks as one of the orcs snarls. Corey acts as the bridge between species. Translating the grunt, the beast claims they are nothing but cannon fodder, low-level pawns kept completely in the dark. However, survival instinct is a powerful motivator. In a heartbeat, the creature betrays his own kin, eager to sell out his superiors to save his own skin. He pleads desperately, insisting the elite commanders hold the secrets of the Dark Orders, offering up their heads in exchange for his own miserable life. A cold smirk curls on our hero's lips. His intuition screams that the beast speaks the truth. He cuts to the heart of the matter, asking if the night raid was orchestrated by an Orkwa. A ripple of confusion tears through the knights. Murmurs exchange in the ranks. The term Orkwa is foreign to their ears, sparking immediate unease. Let's pause for a crucial lore drop. An Orkwa isn't just a title. He is the supreme king of all orcs, the very calamity that forced the allied army to mobilize in the first place. In this brutal war, he is the apex predator, the absolute singularity that must be eradicated at all costs if humanity hopes to survive. Back in the tension of the interrogation, Corey relays the elite's bargaining chip information for Mercy. Our boy nods, accepting the terms with a dangerous calm. But the negotiations hit a wall. The half-orc relays that Orkval is demanding a binding pledge first. A vein pops on the prince's forehead. To break a pledge is to discard one's honor, a concept he holds sacred. A dark chuckle escapes him. He finds it amusing that a savage brute would dare invoke the noble customs of human chivalry. Nevertheless, Yuri decides to play the game. He accepts the terms, sealing the deal with a heavy weight in the air. Jared, however, loses his cool. He demands to know if the prince has lost his mind, planning to release such a threat, but a sharp glance tells him to stand down and trust the process. Corey translates the grim truth. The chieftain moves solely by the will of the Orkwa. Seizing the momentum, our hero demands to know how these monsters anticipated the human travel routes. The answer is chilling. The king possesses a secret method of intelligence gathering, a dark art that even his own minions do not fully comprehend. Jared's face pales as the realization hits. He stammers, asking if the Orksua himself deciphered their strategy and personally commanded the ambush. The prince connects the dots. This mirrors the tragedy of the Holy Kingdom's assault. But there is no time to dwell on the past. The interrogation is far from finished. He leans in, eyes narrowing like a hawk, and poses the ultimate question. Just how powerful is this Orkwa? The prisoner erupts into maniacal laughter. Corey translates the terrifying reality. Even if all the elites combined their might, they would be nothing but dust before him. The monster swears on his blood his king stands at the apex of this world, an entity of unrivaled power. Yuri concedes the possibility with a shrug, but his eyes grow cold as he warns the beast that there are things in this world far more terrifying than raw strength. He reveals the necklace, a symbol of grim resolve. He whispers a chilling truth when pushed. Humans are capable of savagery that would make orcs tremble. He taunts the seething prisoner, his voice dripping with arrogance. He dares the beast to resist, questioning if he still has the will to fight despite their sacred pledge. The atmosphere snaps. The knights spot the restraints loosening and instantly draw their steel, aura flaring in preparation for carnage. With a thunderous roar, Orkval charges, but Yuri doesn't flinch. He simply smirks, continuing his verbal assault about honor and betrayal. He signals his men to close the net. He turns his back on the desperate creature, delivering the execution order with ice-cold indifference. He walks away, his silhouette radiating an overwhelming, kingly aura. The scene shifts to the heavy atmosphere of the medical tent. The priest moves like a whirlwind, attending to the broken bodies of soldiers, one after another. Divine light flows from his hands, knitting flesh and soothing pain. The man is a machine of mercy, healing one soul and instantly pivoting to the next without a single breath of rest. His stamina is inhuman. He has been pouring out his life force relentlessly to save them all. Reinforcements arrive. Hernando enters with Corey in tow, commanding a divide and conquer strategy. Corey proves his worth instantly, rushing in with a bucket of fresh water just as the priest requested. The priest offers a breathless thanks, gesturing for the boy to step back as he prepares a high-level invocation. Holy energy surges into the ordinary water. Corey watches, wide-eyed, sensing the liquid transform, now shimmering with a mystical, otherworldly aura. The transformation is complete. The priest declares it holy water, commanding Corey to use this sacred liquid to cleanse the soldier's corruption. Another cry for help rings out, and the priest dashes off. Corey is left in awe, thinking to himself that this man is a true saint among warriors. Wherever the priest goes, agony turns to relief, watching the magic wash away suffering. Corey feels a spark of profound admiration for the arcane arts. As the first rays of dawn pierce the night, the trio finally collapses by the fire. Hernando breaks the silence, a weary smile on his face, relieved that the chaos has finally settled. The priest bows his head, offering sincere gratitude for the mage's invaluable support during the crisis. Hernando turns the spotlight to Corey, praising his efforts. But our boy flushes red, stammering that he did nothing of note clearly. He is a stranger to kindness and praise. The priest sighs in relief. The casualty count is a miracle. The mage notes that extinguishing the flames of war early was the key to their survival. Yet, the priest's eyes remain shadowed. He admits a heavy feeling that a greater darkness looms on the horizon. Praying for divine guidance in the trials to come, Hernando counters the gloom with unwavering optimism. Even in the deepest abyss, he insists, a light of hope always remains. He gestures to the men around the campfire. Their voices rise in song, laughter echoing where screams once filled the air. Moments ago, they were at death's door, fighting for every breath. Now, they stand united, healing each other's wounds and spirits. With a flick of his wrist, the mage weaves a spell. Brilliant fireworks bloom against the night sky, a dazzling display proving that magic exists to uplift the human heart. Corey gazes up, the reflection of the lights dancing in his eyes. The beauty captivates him, and he finally finds his voice, asking the mage to teach him the path of sorcery. Hernando blinks in genuine surprise. It has been an eternity since anyone sought his tutelage. He smiles warmly, patting Corey on the head, and asks the question that will define the boy's destiny. Why do you wish to learn? The half-orc confesses his true heart. It wasn't just the prince's suggestion, it is his own will now. He believes magic is the key to happiness, a power to save lives. The mage can't help but smile at such a pure ambition. Corey beams, his grin stretching from ear to ear at the mere thought of his training beginning. The scene cuts to the open plains. A soldier rushes in, breathless, bringing news of Imperial Knights demanding an audience. Jared questions the move, but Yuri remains resolute. They are already at the rendezvous point. There is no turning back. With icy authority, the prince commands the soldier to bring them in immediately. The first knight steps forward, bowing with practiced elegance. He is Ripio Artem, second son of Count Janin, honored to finally meet the prince. Yuri plays the diplomat, inquiring if the Empire's forces have reached Balshad yet. Ripio boasts that his men arrived first, their scouts already sweeping the area ahead. But Yuri's gaze shifts. He asks about the silent figure behind Ripio. The noble apologizes his companion is in no state for formal greetings. The helmet comes off. Time seems to freeze. Yuri stares, wondering if fate is playing a cruel joke on him. Standing before him is Graham Heartful. The man calls himself a disgrace, a fallen noble who lost everything. But Yuri knows better. In the fires of his past life, this was the man he once begged for mercy. Yuri offers respect to the great knight, but Graham shakes his head, claiming he is a knight no more. The prince presses on. Did a man of his caliber truly enlist alone? Graham confirms it with a stoic nod. Suddenly, Ripio interjects. He insists the prince ignore such nonsense. Graham's fall was the fault of an incompetent commander. Graham tries to silence him, but Ripio's fired up, proclaiming the massive glory Graham once brought to the Empire. The loyal friend refuses to keep his mouth shut. Meanwhile, Yuri's mind races, recalling the true tragedy behind Graham's lost title. He never dreamed he'd find a legend like this within the Allied ranks. Seeing one of the Empire's greatest warriors reduced to this, it makes him question everything. But on the surface, Yuri wears a perfect, plastic smile. He tells Graham it is an honor to meet a warrior of such renowned strength. Then, he drops a bombshell proposal. Join the Briel army instead. Yuri usually despises Imperial Knights, but Graham is the exception. In the hell of his previous life, this man gave him a chance to live when the world wanted him dead. Graham surely paid a heavy price for that mercy. Driven by that ancient debt, Yuri vows that Briel would treat him with the dignity he deserves. But Graham is a man of iron principles. He declines the offer politely, without a single shred of hesitation. The prince does not press the issue. He accepts the rejection gracefully. Deep down, Yuri knew the answer before he even asked. Time passes. The Briel army finally reaches the Allied rendezvous point, the colossal city of Balshad. It is a fortress of breathtaking scale. Dominating the central plains, its influence is undeniable. The sheer grandeur of the place leaves the prince impressed. Legends say the Dukes of Balshad have been master magicians for generations. The accompanying mage confirms the tales but whispers a dark warning. The current Duke has a terrifying reputation. She might just eat the prince alive if he lets his guard down. Yuri wonders if he's dealing with some stubborn, old-fashioned fossil stuck in the past. He shrugs it off, deciding to cross that bridge when he actually meets the man. But the moment they step into the castle hall, reality slaps him in the face. A stunning young woman steps forward to welcome them. She introduces herself as Mary Rose Entree, the Duke of Balshad. Yuri is thunderstruck. He expected a wrinkled elder, not a radiant beauty. The mage snickers, mocking the prince for being so behind the times. The Duke greets the knights with warmth before locking eyes with Yuri. She summons him forward, and he steps up, introducing himself as the army's commander. Mary flashes a dazzling smile, praising his handsome looks before abruptly asking his age. 18, he replies. Her smile widens. They are peers. In her eyes, that means they should have no trouble becoming very intimate allies. After a brief exchange, Yuri sees through the facade. This woman is a predator. She knows exactly how to weaponize her charm. And Yuri has never had a happy ending with women who smile like that. With a voice as calm as still water, he assures her that age is nothing but a number. True bonds are forged through shared ground, not years. She flashes a knowing smile, then signals the doors to open. The Knights of Brussin have arrived. Radiating authority, she presents them to the Knights of Bull. Henceforth, these two forces will not clash, but stand united side by side. She commands them to mingle, for true understanding is the foundation of any alliance. Jared leans in, whispering his confusion to the mage. The mage simply shrugs, remarking that is just how that woman operates. There is no deeper meaning to find. Shifting focus, Jared asks if Brussin is that tiny nation nestled against the border. The prince nods. Small, perhaps, but fierce. Their warriors are forged by the rough seas, hardened into steel by a life of survival. On cue, a rugged figure steps from the ranks. He introduces himself as Jonathan, the iron-willed commander of the Brussin army. He pours a drink for the prince, the liquid dark and heavy. Yuri eyes the cup, questioning if this can truly be called wine. Jonathan admits their rugged homeland knows nothing of vintage luxuries. Yet, he offers the cup all the same. But the comment strikes a nerve. One of Jonathan's men explodes in fury, accusing the prince of mocking their humble origins. He struggles against his comrades, roaring to be released. This insult is one he cannot swallow. Jonathan restrains his man with a single hand. He locks eyes with the prince, his voice dangerously calm. He asks if the prince intends to spark a diplomatic incident against Brussin. The prince does not flinch. He simply asks if an apology is what they are seeking. A smirk tugs at Jonathan's lips. He sees only two options. Either the rumors of the prince's rudeness are true, or this is a calculated test. Our hero's gaze turns steely. He replies that an untrustworthy ally is worse than an enemy. Are they ready to prove their worth? Jonathan answers instantly. For a knight, proof lies only in the steel of their blade. The Duke intervenes with a delighted smile. She offers to escort the parties to the training grounds immediately. The setting shifts to the arena. The Duke teases the prince, suspecting this chaos was his plan from the start. Her amusement betrays that she is enjoying the show. Yuri tells her to drop the innocent act. It is obvious she played her part in orchestrating this clash. Internally, he knows he must gauge the strength of the Brussin Knights, but there is a hidden agenda behind his actions. In the timeline to come, one of these very men is destined to ascend as a member of the legendary Great Ten. He must identify this diamond in the rough before anyone else. Down in the arena, the combatants take their stances. Prion introduces himself with a cocky grin, promising a good time. Roland remains a silent statue, focused only on the fight. From the overlook, Yuri watches with hawk-like intensity. Every movement holds a clue he cannot afford to miss. The Great Ten are the apex predators of this continent. Their power is absolute, enough to ignite wars or silence empires with a single word. Securing an alliance with such a future legend is not just an advantage, it is a necessity for survival. And as history shows, the strongest brotherhoods are often forged in the fires of combat. Prion acknowledges his opponent's fame. He has heard the tales of Roland, the genius tournament champion. He launches forward. Prion sneers that a real death match is nothing like the stage performances put on for the nobility. Roland sidesteps the strike effortlessly. To his eyes, the attack is amateurish, leaving openings wide enough to drive a carriage through. Certain of victory, Prion strikes, but the crowd gasps in shock as he is instantly neutralized. It was a trap. Roland baited the attack with a false opening, parrying with a mere flick of his wrist. In the same breath, he shifted his weight for a devastating counter. Watching the display, the prince realizes the knight from Brussin is impressive. An ordinary fighter would have crumbled, but Roland is in a league of his own. Prion admits his defeat with a grin. He walked right into that trap, but the lesson learned was worth the loss. Applause thunders through the arena. The commander nods, stating he expected nothing less from a nation renowned for its chivalry. Our boy accepts the praise with humility. He returns the compliment, acknowledging the undeniable skill of the Brussin warrior. The score stands at 1-0, but the contest is far from over. The commander turns to his ranks, summoning the next challenger to the stage. Our hero scans the new opponent. His aura is heavy. This one is undeniably strong. The commander confirms the suspicion. This is Jose, their strongest blade, a man whose sole ambition is to stand at the pinnacle of Brusen's might. Yuri turns to Jared, dropping a bombshell. Jared will take this round. The subordinate freezes in shock as our boy orders him to move. Names are exchanged in the center of the arena, eyes lock, measuring the distance between life and death. Doubt creeps into Jared's mind. He feels the impending loss. Sensing that Jose is a predator who cares only for absolute victory, Jose calls him out. Analyzing his cautious style, he lunges. Jared realizes a block would be suicide and desperately attempts to dodge. Jose sneered, mocking his opponent's focus before unleashing a catastrophic barrage of attacks. Jared defended desperately, watching him. The prince realized Jose possessed the raw, monstrous power of a steroid-fueled orc. He was a beast who perfectly fused brute physique with sword mastery. The prince was certain this man was destined to stand among the legendary Great 10 in the future. Jared focused everything on defense, but it wasn't enough. Jose hoisted him into the air and slammed him into the earth with bone-shaking force. Dust settled. The duel was over. Jose offered a hand, praising the warrior's grit for holding his ground against such an onslaught for so long. Admitting he had much to learn, Jared bowed. The prince rose, declaring the score settled for now. The duke scoffed at their little game, but Yuri shot back. This wasn't play, it was forging brotherhood in iron. Every strike built loyalty. This fight was essential. The duke pouted, feigning disappointment that he treated his alliance with the Brucine so seriously, yet he hadn't spared a single moment for a private conversation with her. Just as she wove her web of dark charm, the commander cut in, demanding to see their quarters. She recalled her promise. The soldiers were restless, and he insisted on seeing the office immediately. She agreed, turning her gaze to our hero with a tempting offer to join. But Yuri shut her down with ice-cold indifference, citing urgent matters. Without a backward glance, he vanished. The commander roared with laughter at the escape, leaving the duke fuming at Yuri's arrogance. Days passed. The allied forces finally convened at Balshad. Word of the Supreme Commander's arrival spread like wildfire. While other nations sized each other up, only Briel remained focused. Fernando questioned Yuri. Should they train? The other commanders were already exchanging strategies. The prince scoffed. He knew those strategies were nothing but half-truths. These were masters of the blade. Their colossal pride would never allow them to reveal their full hands. True cooperation was impossible. They viewed each other with disdain. To earn their respect, the prince realized he had to display overwhelming dominance. He challenged Roland. The knight beamed, honored to cross blades with our hero. Yuri's eyes narrowed. Come at me with everything you have. Roland grinned, unleashing a torrent of pure mana. Yuri sensed it immediately. This would be a legendary spar. Roland became a blur. Launching a strike, Yuri parried it with effortless precision. A lethal thrust followed. Yuri analyzed the motion. Roland's technique was flawless, devoid of a single wasted breath. He had always been this way, even in the past life. When Roland's blade ended Yuri's life, his swordsmanship had screamed with emotion. Fate had changed. He could trust Roland now, but as a leader, Yuri had to prove his superiority. Steel sang against steel. Both warriors poured their souls into a symphony of violence. The spectacle ignited the crowd. Jared smirked, noting the electric energy in the air. Suddenly, Jose appeared, his eyes widening at the prince's monstrous talent. He begged for a favor, a duel of his own. Yuri smiled, generously offering Jared as a sacrificial lamb. Jose dragged the poor warrior away. Roland bowed, thanking Yuri for the exhilarating exchange. Their blades would definitely meet again. Later, the prince rested beneath an ancient tree, seeking a private audience with Asana. He demanded intel. She confirmed the rumors. The mysterious foreigner was hiding in Balshad, the greatest swordsman of the East. A member of the Great 10 who once faced the terrifying Orua alone. His strength was the key. They needed him for the war to come. Yuri ordered Asana to hunt him down. His upcoming clash with Orua would be his final stand, marking his exit from the Great 10. History shifted. A former imperial prince, Ragna, had risen to become the allied commander. A man our hero knew all too well from the ashes of his previous life. Memories flooded back. Before the regression, he stood with the princess, boldly declaring that they had nothing to fear. Catherine hesitated, doubt clouding her eyes. But Yuri whispered a promise of protection. And in that moment, passion eclipsed all reason as they surrendered to each other. Suddenly, a rough voice shattered the mood. A man lounging on the couch mocked them for their location, leaving the princess burning with shame. Ragnar rose to his feet, scoffing. He muttered that she was losing her composure over absolutely nothing. His gaze then locked onto our hero. He demanded to know, did Yuri truly harbor feelings for the princess? The prince stood frozen, the question flying over his head. Ragnar didn't press him, simply shrugging that the answer would reveal itself in time. Reality came rushing back. Yuri reflected on that brief memory, realizing one thing, that man possessed a presence unlike any other. Back in the present, the war council was in chaos. The gathered leaders were too busy whispering rumors about the commander-in-chief to focus. Petty nobles squabbled over political clout, treating war like a social mixer. But Yuri froze. Ragnar had materialized behind him like a ghost. The man claimed the head seat with terrifying ease. He drummed his fingers on the armrest, announcing that playtime was officially over. An overwhelming aura flooded the chamber. The air grew heavy as he declared his absolute hatred for cowardice. Every spine in the room stiffened. The sheer pressure radiating from him made it hard to even breathe. While others trembled, our prince merely smirked at the theatrical entrance. The commander promised death to deserters, vowing that every knight stood equal in his eyes. A deadly silence gripped the hall, until Yuri shattered it. He raised his voice, demanding the floor for a crucial question. He grilled the commander on their intel regarding the orcs, internally respecting the sheer audacity of the man sitting before him. Ragnar's lips curled into an amused smirk. He asked for a name, and our hero announced his identity without an ounce of fear. The commander chuckled, recalling that Georg had spoken of this young talent. He stood tall, revealing that the Orkwa had already united 3 massive tribes into a horde. A heavy hand landed on the prince's shoulder. Ragnar leaned in, his expression grim as he continued the briefing. Their scouts had confirmed the worst. The vanguard of the enemy army was already massing near Balshad. This would be the Allied forces' baptism by fire. The commander then threw down the gauntlet, offering Yuri the suicide mission of leading the front lines. The room held its breath. Without hesitation, Yuri accepted the challenge, promising to give his all. That night, the crackle of a campfire accompanied Yuri's heavy thoughts. Mary emerged from the shadows. Sensing the turmoil in his heart, the prince questioned her presence, but she cut to the chase. She knew he had secured the most dangerous position on the battlefield, yet his face showed burden rather than glory. This hesitation sparked a flame of curiosity within the mage. He called her bold, but she ignored the jab. Her tone turned icy serious. Her people's lives hung in the balance, and she wouldn't entrust them to a stranger lightly. She demanded he drop the formalities. She needed an honest answer, right here, right now. Mary made her offer clear. If his answer satisfied her soul, she would lend him her devastating power. Flames danced at her fingertips, a reminder of why she held the title of Arcana. She teased that her magic would far outstrip Arnando's pathetic tricks in these open lands. Yuri's expression remained dark. He spoke the cold, a hard-part truth. Blood would flow, and lives would be lost. He rose, the firelight casting long shadows. The vanguard always paid the butcher's bill. He knew he would have to bury friends he had just broken bread with, and that blood would be on his hands. It was the cost of the decision he made in that council room. He wasn't trying to be sentimental. He was simply wrestling with the crushing weight of a commander's duty. Mary's eyes sparkled with sudden respect. It was the perfect answer, though she feigned annoyance that he cared more for his soldiers than a pretty lady. She reached out, her demeanor shifting. She pledged her magic to the prince for the coming storm. Their hands met, sealing the pact. The hero offered his gratitude. He would need every ounce of her strength. Days later, destiny arrived. The plains fell silent as 2 massive armies stared each other down, waiting for the signal to paint the grass red. At the tip of the spear stood Yuri. He drew his weapon, roaring for his forces to prepare for impact. Far behind the lines, Ragnar frowned. The Arcana mage was standing beside him instead of deploying with the vanguard. With a deceivingly innocent smile, she revealed the truth. This positioning was a direct order from the third prince himself. In the distance, the prince spurred his horse. He charged straight into the maw of death, leading the assault like a glorious madman. He was diving headfirst into the enemy's kill zone. The supreme commander watched, torn between admiration for his guts and horror at his recklessness. Beside him, Mary apologized for the coming spectacle. She raised her staff, mana beginning to swirl violently around her. The sky screamed as a colossal sphere of flame materialized. It hung above the battlefield like a second, angry sun. She brought her staff down like a judge's gavel. The blazing apocalypse descended, crashing directly onto the orc horde. The impact shook the earth mere seconds before Yuri's charge connected. Ragna screamed in panic the blast was suicidal, landing inches from their own commander. But Mary didn't flinch. With a smirk that matched the fire in her eyes, she whispered, "That is exactly the hell the prince asked for." A scorching fireball plummets from the heavens, but our hero dives straight into the chaos, his spear claiming an orc's life in a single, fluid strike before he leaps clear of the blast zone. Without missing a beat, he thrusts his sword forward. A massive water barrier erupts, shielding his men as he roars for them to charge without a shred of hesitation. The Supreme Commander watches in stunned silence, his eyes wide. Prince Yuri plunges directly through the roaring inferno. Taking the vanguard once more, he rallies his troops to follow him straight into the jaws of the fire. A pack of mindless orcs, driven by bloodlust, rushes forward to meet their doom. The prince welcomes them with death, hurling his blade straight through a monster's throat, but from the shadows, another beast lunges for a fatal backstab. Clang steel meets bone as a loyal ally steps in, blocking the lethal blow and saving the prince's life like a true brother in arms. Witnessing this explosion of courage and raw power, the other commanders finally understand. The kingdom of Briel isn't just talk, their knights are monsters on the battlefield. As the carnage reaches its peak, the commander of the Holy Kingdom makes her move. She commands her forces to support the Briel warriors, ordering them to obliterate any stray enemy foolish enough to stand alone. Supreme Commander Ragnar grins, absolutely floored. The prince's fearless charge through the flames hasn't just won ground, it has set the entire army's morale on fire. But what truly terrifies him is the tactical genius on display. Raining fire on the enemy while protecting his own troops with water barriers, it is madness. It forces him to question just how the prince managed to tame the stubborn Duke Mary into agreeing to such a reckless gambit. The Duke admits she fought it at first, but Yuri's charisma was undeniable. He delivered on every word, and even Ragnar has to nod in respect. This was one hell of a debut for the Allied forces' first legendary battle. Under the cover of night, Duke Mary sits at her desk, buried in mountains of paperwork. She mutters that while Prince Yuri's victory was impressive, her mood is ruined by the intruder standing in her quarters. A win on the battlefield doesn't grant permission to barge in uninvited. The culprit is none other than Sensei Hernando. He leans back casually, teasing that she could show a little warmth to her former master. Hernando jokes that a simple "how are you" or a proper bow wouldn't hurt, but Mary's ice cold. She snaps back instantly. He barely counts as a teacher, considering he vanished into thin air and ghosted her without a word. Ignoring the venom, Hernando makes himself at home. He claims he is just checking on his star pupil, specifically regarding her research on the transcending interpretation formula. At the mention of her work, the Duke's professional pride takes over. She admits she has made significant breakthroughs. This arcane art is revolutionary, allowing the user to decipher unknown tongues by bridging them with known languages. She even uncovered a direct tether linking it to ancient, forgotten magic. Impressed, Hernando tells her to report every detail. Then, his gaze turns serious. He asks if Prince Yuri has caught her interest, because he desperately needs her aid. Mary offers a sly, knowing smile, noting how odd it is for the prince's fate to weigh so heavily on him. She coldly reminds Hernando that a grand wizard has no business meddling in the destiny of mere mortals. Hernando concedes the point, but his expression darkens. The situation is far more twisted than she realizes. The threads of fate are tangling. Too many powerful players are involved in the prince's future, including the Empire's commander herself. The scene shifts to the war tent. Supreme Commander Ragnar assigns our prince his next directive, a high-stakes scouting mission that could decide the war. The objective is suicide-level dangerous. They must infiltrate deep into orc territory within the eastern region by dawn. The main army faces a path crawling with ambushes. To survive, a separate scouting unit must act as a shield, preventing encirclement and chaos. Hearing the command, Prince Yuri looks visibly displeased. He suggests the Supreme Commander give another nation the glory. Arguing Briel has already bled enough on the front lines, but Ragnar is immovable. He insists this mission requires absolute trust, and right now, Briel is the only weapon he believes in. Cornered with no escape, our boy flashes a cheeky grin and counters with a devious plan of his own. Later, a messenger arrives at the Holy Kingdom's camp. Orders from the top regarding the selection of the Vanguard Protection Unit have arrived. It will not be an appointment. It will be a competition. Any nation wishing to lead must prove their worth. The other commanders ignite with competitive fire, intrigued by Ragnar's unorthodox method of selecting the elite. Back at Yuri's camp, Hernando reads the grim victory conditions aloud. Soldiers must harvest the right ears of the orcs. Future merits and rank will be decided solely by who collects the most trophies. The Great Wizard is horrified that the prince actually proposed such a savage contest, but our boy just smirks, claiming these are direct orders from the Supreme Commander. Everyone plays the game, Yuri declares, and in this slaughter, every nation's true strength will be laid bare. However, his right-hand man is anxious. This mission requires skills far different from standard warfare. He knows their soldiers might struggle in this grisly hunt, but Prince Yuri just offers a mysterious, confident smile. That signature smirk returns to his face, the look of a tactician who has already won the war before the first battle cry. As dawn breaks, the moment of reckoning arrives, and the Supreme Commander steps forward to declare the terms of engagement. The directive is simple yet brutal: hunt down every orc in the vicinity and slaughter them without mercy. As stated before, the stakes are absolute. The nation that secures the highest ear count will claim dominance and top priority for all future military operations. Naturally, the three commanders are burning with ambition, their eyes blazing with a desperate need to prove their superior strength to the world. Ragnar flips the hourglass, the falling sand signaling the start of the carnage. A chaotic grin spreads across his face. He is dying to see how this little prince's gamble plays out. One of his lieutenants speaks up, noting that the commander seems to be putting an awful lot of faith in the young royal lately. Ragnar laughs heartily, admitting the truth. He's grown fond of the kid after all. Yuri's insane strategies somehow always yield miraculous results. Meanwhile, on the front lines, Yuri's soldiers are restless, demanding to know the strategy. The prince calmly tells them their first step is simply to locate a pack of prey. With a confident chuckle, he assures them the plan is already in motion, and as if on cue, a squad of orc riders thunders into view. In a flash, our boy unveils his secret weapon, the red crystal necklace. Its crimson magic pulses violently, instantly drawing the gaze of the unsuspecting monsters like moths to a flame. Clutching the glowing artifact, he issues a cold reminder to his troops, focus only on the prize. They are here for the ears, and nothing else matters. Effortless, Yuri launches himself into the fray, his blade dancing through the air, carving through orc flesh like a whirlwind of death. Witnessing the slaughter, the massive alpha orc steps forward, its eyes burn with murderous rage, locking onto the human daring to decimate its kin. But speed is power. Before the beast can even raise its axe, the Prince of Briel severs its head in one clean, devastating strike. This man came prepared for war to dominate this competition. His first ace is the fiery magic necklace, a trophy of power looted from the bandit raid. And his second ace, a set of mysterious, specialized daggers strapped securely to his waist, waiting to be unleashed. Suddenly, a soldier rushes over, beaming with pride as he reports that they have already harvested 10 pairs of ears, but the prince only smirks, gripping a fresh dagger. He tells them that 10 is nowhere near enough. The soldier freezes, confusion written all over his face. Yuri's eyes shine with the intensity of a predator setting a trap. Without hesitation, he drives the blade deep into the earth. Boom! A blinding pillar of light erupts into the heavens, a swirling vortex of blazing blue and golden aura that shakes the very ground. The prince turns to his stunned men, his voice ringing with authority. They aren't just here for a contest. They are here to farm aura, and that means they are not leaving this battlefield until every single orc in this wasteland has been utterly exterminated.